Yes. Call the regular meeting of the South Burlington School Board to order on Wednesday, March 12th at 6:02 p.m. Agenda item 2, announcements and amendments to the agenda. All the announcements. I have two. I'd like to welcome and introduce Daisy Brayton, our new HR director. And then I'd also like to add a school tour discussion to item 4, so making it 4. Would you like to add? Perhaps right after public comment. We could make it the new 4A.
And 2 items, Seamus, Dan and I are gonna meet after this meeting around just catching up on some contract stuff. Violet, I didn't know if you wanted to participate, it wasn't, but if you did, I didn't know if we wanted to add it as an executive session to the agenda. Or if we need to,
It's just the 3 of you, it's
not a forum, so we could
Yeah.
meet, but I didn't.
It's a negotiation team. I'm happy to meet with you and
Only, it's just catch up, right?
Yeah,
So,
100%.
so do we need to add it as executive if you're participating?
technically I can participate in a prep session. It is not, it would be an executive session if we were to add members of the board who are not on the negotiating team.
Okay, so at this point, I don't think we're gonna do that, so.
Yeah.
We can just, okay, so I just wanna make sure, and then, other item I wanted to add is in someplace just in discussion. During donuts and discussion the other week, there was a question that came up about whether or not board members are considered employees and have an update on that.
Okay.
Interesting.
Is that an update that we would want ours and more community members would be aware?
We can, so we could put it on the next agenda as a forum topic, absolutely.
Let's do that, when we're setting the agenda for March 19th. Let's have that. So that, I mean, that could also be like a community engagement update, since some of the discussions community engagement, but if you wanted to have more visibility so that anyone who might be having that question.
Let's add it to the next agenda, then I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, great. Any other announcements or amendments? Seeing none, we will move on to comments from the public, agenda item 3. This is the community's opportunity to share feedback and concerns with the board. We ask that you keep your comments concise, 2 to 3 minutes, and that you refrain from using any information that would identify a specific person. Please raise your hand in the room or use the Zoom raise hand feature. We will only use the online chat to manage any tech issues. We are not able to take action on any issues brought to us during public comment. However, any board member may suggest tonight that the issue or question be added to a future agenda for discussion. They also delegate addressing issues to our superintendent, Violet Nichols, and it is always helpful if you can email us a copy of your comments for follow-up. So with that, public comment in the room, please. So if we come up to the mics here and state your name and if you're a resident.
Hi, everybody. Can I just clarify, do I have 2 or 3 minutes?
It's a range of 2 to 3.
Okay,
So
because I did read it at home to make sure it was in the, should be 3, so. Thank you. Okay, so I'm so grateful for both the budget
Can you
passing.
introduce yourself, sorry?
Sorry, yes. My name is Helena Ganji. I'm a school counselor at the high school, and I've been there almost 20 years. And I'm grateful for the budget passing, and I'm grateful for new members on the school board. So welcome, thank you, and thank you for those of you that are returning to continue to do this work. So I first started my career in the district in 2005, and I'm also the parent of 3 teenagers in a district next door. So I carry both a personal and professional passion for the work that we all do. I've previously shared concerns about possible staff reductions. Now that the budget has passed and retirements are on the horizon, I feel compelled to once again reach out with hope that there may be a reallocation of funds and reconsideration of 2 specific positions. The school counselor position at the high school. The loss of this full-time FTE counselor will leave the school counseling department with fewer counselors than when I started almost 20 years ago. It is clear that student needs have changed through the years, and it is important to understand that school counselors serve all students, not only those at risk or that need additional support. The School Counselor Association indicates that this role supports students' academic, social, emotional, and career and post-secondary development. Since school counselors serve the entire student body, a subsequent increase in caseloads will impact our ability to provide quality service in each domain. A school counselor at the high school level holds a specific skill set and expertise required of the role. I am grateful that other student support personnel exist to supplement this work. That said, these other supports do not replace the responsibilities or the competencies that a school counselor brings to a high school system. In this vein, I view the education quality standards as compromised with these proposed increased caseloads of over 200 students, which would be amongst the highest in the state. The ninth grade dean of students. This position has been vital to my work as a school counselor through my entire career, and it is crucial for the transition of ninth grade students to the high school. This role fosters specific connections and interventions with our school choice students from Franklin and Grand Isle counties, while monitoring the academic and social emotional well-being of the entire freshman class. This is a support staff position with 100% student-facing responsibilities at the high school, and it does not seem to make economic sense to let this particular position go. Professionally, I view the loss of this position as detrimental to the high school's ability to function on a day-to-day basis. School counselors team daily with this position and can attest to the necessity of having a specific liaison for ninth graders within the building. Personally, words cannot express my admiration and gratitude for teaming with Denise Weaver, the actual person in the role. This person has been a fierce advocate for students, and her expertise in supporting the most complex family systems is unmatched. She has a remarkable ability to connect with students and staff and has maintained connections with generations of alumni within the greater South Burlington community. I appreciate your time. And again, I've worked here for almost 20 years and I'm very passionate and dedicated to the success of high school. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Welcome, come on up. Good night.
You just have to say your name.
My name is Dave Vaughn, Boy. I'm a freshman at CHS. I don't really have much to say, but there are some days where I come to school and I kind of feel down. But there is this one counselor that is always there for me to make me laugh and it made me feel welcome at the school. And
You're doing great.
this counselor isn't the only counselor of color. So if I ever have any problems, he's the one I go to first. He can talk to me better than other counselors. And he just helps me with whatever I need. The school. He just helped me at when I first started school. He was the one that told me what to do and showed me the ropes and stuff. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much.
Hop over quick. Keyless Lacoste, school counselor. I honestly don't have too much to say. I kind of wanted to support the students who wanted to come up to speak. Just to add on to, some of our frustration, we hope that the students are the individuals that guys prioritize because you guys are in this work to serve the students of this community. And so last week I went into about, going into the buildings to, firsthand seeing what's going on for yourself. And seeing the demographic of the population would then help direct your work and see where there are, points and areas that need more attention. And so I just want to scream out loud that even though the budget passed, you guys as a group, as a consensus can come together to make the right decisions to prioritize what's really important here. And I also want to speak into, and, you know, praise Denise Weaver, a lot of her work, and collaboration, she's been a huge support in my start of my career as school counselor. And, you know, I'm really just 4 or 5 months into this job. And so I want to scream that when the students are coming to talk to you guys, they want to feel and be heard. And you guys are the individuals that can make certain things happen. So I guess we want you guys to have a listening ear. I think that's really important. And if you're not here to listen to the individuals in this community, then what are you in this work for? And that's a really big question for you guys to, you know, to grapple with. If you're not here to listen to students and the parents and the staff who work under you in this community, then what are you sitting in these chairs for? So thank you.
Any other public comment?
Hi, my name is Trishonda Smith. And I'm a student of SBHS. And see what, like, when I first came to the school, to high school, like, Mr. Lucrezi, he was like helping me to like feel comfortable because I was nervous at first. And then he like helped me and make me like feel at home and feel comfortable. And like I feel like anytime like I'm having troubles, I can go and talk to him. And like when I'm in class, some things bugging me, and can go straight to him and he just makes it better. Yeah, I'm new from the middle school, but we didn't really talk that much until I get to high school. And then he's a nice person. And he's a good counselor. Any day, like, I don't think how to say it, but any day, I'm like, if I have work or anything, like, if I don't understand it, I know that he's like someone I can go to and ask him if he understand it. And, yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Riley. I'm here because of this guy right here right now. I'm attending this school right now because of him. He been my emotional help. He been my stay with me and stuff. Any problem I have, I go to him, I talk to him. If I'm struggling with schoolwork, he's there for me, talking to me. Things that back when it's been a problem, I go to him, speak to him. He's there for me. Everything, he's just there for me. I'm asking you, just please, just help me. I'm begging. It hurts my heart right now that he might be leaving, and I'm wondering if I'm gonna leave as well, because he's gone. I'm actually praying right now that you can do your best to help him, just keeping him right here now. I'm begging you. Whatever it does, I wanna cry right now, but I'm falling by my tears. You see my friends all right here, they're crying right now, because they know that they can't corner him. No, they can't corner him, so I'm just begging. That's all I have to say. Just begging. So please, thank you for your time.
Talk. The SBHS Counseling Productions and the 915 Productions. Can I just say one thing?
If I can speak just for the folks that are here.
It's not best practice for the board to engage in open dialogue with. Okay. We'll add it to the discussion. Move on to agenda item 4. Is our discussion items, and up first we have a welcome of our new HR director.
I want to thank our students who all are awesome and brave, and thank you for being here. Your words matter, so thank you. And you're welcome to stay for the whole meeting or head out, totally up to you all. I just wanted to give you that option, so please, you're totally welcome to stay. But I wanted to just make sure you know your options. Daisy, folks, I now want to introduce Daisy Brayton. Daisy is replacing our wonderful HR director who's retiring, and Daisy comes with a wealth of experience, having held every position in HR, even most recently working with our partners at the city. So I'm really, feeling that's going to be a beneficial connection, and just glad to have her expertise and positivity. Welcome to the team, and wanted to introduce you to the board and our committee.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I don't know which one is, I think the green one is on the new.
That's a local mic
Gotcha.
on your left, and
Well,
then
I will
the
just talk to
RETA.
them
Yeah.
And make sure that
Best strategy.
I speak loudly. But yes, my name's Daisy Brayton and I am in day 3. It is definitely my honor and my privilege to serve as the new HR director for the school district. As Superintendent Nichols said, I come to you immediately from the city of South Burlington. And I am a new Vermonter. I've been here about 3 years, and prior to that, I spent about 30 years in Nebraska. But I grew up and went to high school and college in Los Angeles, here in California. So kind of made my way across the United States. Although I should say, I was born in American Samoa, Pango, American Samoa. So I have literally gone across the world. So you all now know half my passwords. So but yes, I did want to say it is definitely my privilege and honor to come and join the school district with working with Karen these past 3 days. I do have to say she has done an amazing amount of work in the time that she has been here, and the amount of detail that she's trying to pass on to me, it really is leaving me in a good place. And she is leaving saying, Daisy, I set the foundation, and now hopefully you can take it to the next level. So I am very much excited to join this team and this organization to do that. So yes, I'm very excited to work with you all and meet you, and welcome to the new board members. And I'm here for anything that I can help you with, and thank you very much for letting me join this team.
Thank you, Daisy.
All right, so that is next, school board member introductions. We waited to formally introduce ourselves until we were a full team. But anyone to volunteer to start? Ideally, maybe just share your name, how long you've been on the board, passions or specific expertise that you have that might be useful to the team, or anything else that you'd like the community to know about yourself or your fellow board members.
Okay, I'll go first. Hi, my name is Emily Hoffman, and I have been on the board for a week. And I'm really happy to be here. I have 4 children, 3 of which have graduated, and 1 is 3rd grade. And I also attended South Burlington High School as a student. I've lived in South Burlington for most of my life. And I really feel a big connection to the city and to the school, and I'm really happy to be here on the board and representing students, the teachers, and the community, because I've kind of been all of them. Oh, I worked at the high school too a long time ago. So I have like every connection possible, and I'm just really happy to be here. I am a project manager, and I feel like that might help me a little bit in this role. And I also really try to see things from all perspectives and really work collaboratively with people, even if we don't always agree, but we can speak respectfully and share ideas, and I'm really excited to do that on this team.
I'm Laura Williams, and I've been on board for 2.5 years, and I have 2 children in their 20s, so they went in high school here, and I'm a teacher, Spanish teacher at Essex High School.
I'm Seamus Absher. I have 2 kids in the school district. And I think that South Burlington is a great middle-class place to live. And I think that everything we can do to make it a good place to live for everybody in the community will be good for everybody in the community. So, you know, community supporting schools, and then, you know, what the schools give back to the community is also really important to me. So, well, I'm here. I'm Tim Warren. I've been a resident of South Burlington for 25 years. I've been on the board for a little over 1.5 years now. I'm gonna just say I'm a native Vermonter, so I don't know how many of us are left, but I am one of the few probably. Thank you.
Well, but I don't know, I go back a couple generations, don't you? Not in this-
Yeah, my mom's from Belvedere Center, so we go
Oh, right.
way
You
back.
go.
Yeah, I got this.
He wins. It's got me beat.
So, I'm happy to be on the board. I'm an instructional designer by trade, which means I'm very fussy about grammar and all of that good stuff. You'll see that come out in different meetings and such. I have 2 kids currently in the system. They're seniors in high school. They're about to graduate. I have twin girls, so looking forward to seeing them walk across the stage, hopefully this June. I've been really fortunate to be on the board with some wonderful people, and I'm really looking forward to this board, and I'm very excited about it. So thank you.
My name is Dan Boyer. I have been on the board a week. Moved to Vermont 16 years ago after I retired from the military. Started working for the South Burlington Police Department shortly after I moved here. Retired from that last July. 2 kids, one graduated from South Burlington in 21, the other, my youngest, graduated last year. And just looking forward to working with everybody.
And hi, my name is Jen Lawrence. I go by Jennifer, Jenny, Jen, Jenna. And I have also been on the board for 1 week, and I'm very happy to be here and to be serving, feel very privileged to be serving with all of you. I'm originally from Massachusetts, and feel it's kind of a funny thing with numbers for me. I love numbers, and I love that I'm number 7 in this seat because I'm also the youngest of 7. Originally from Massachusetts, have lived all over the country. I met my husband Charlie in California. We were studying, we were both geologists. And we lived in California, we've lived in Virginia, we've lived in Texas. We've been in South Burlington for the last 3.5 years. And we came here when we were looking at colleges for our triplets who were going into their junior year of high school. And had the opportunity to live anywhere and decided to live in South Burlington because the schools were the best in the state. And so our triplets have graduated from South Burlington High School. They did fantastic there. They are now at the University of Vermont. And we also have a 4th child who is he's a junior. I keep saying he's a sophomore. He's a junior at South Burlington. And again, just so happy to be here with all of you and looking forward to what we can do together.
I think you all know me, I'm Chelsea. I've been on the board for 3 years, and I'm really looking forward to the board team, and I can already tell it's a very communicative, engaged group, which is going to be wonderful. And I think personally, I really value respectful discourse. I actually really love having conversations with people I don't agree with, so long as the conversation stays civil. And I'm hoping as the chair to promote that type of conversation. Thank you.
Welcome our student reps.
Yes. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Gracie. I'm a senior at the high school, and I think my role is just to really represent the student voice, and I do that by talking to students of all backgrounds, and bringing that to you guys. That's what I have to do for.
And my name's Allie. I'm a junior at South Burlington High School. And I joined the school board mainly because I wanted to get more involved in the community while also being able to bring that back to the students. So that's been my goal.
I feel like it was just yesterday that you were on board and now you're gonna be taking the senior position. I am so excited to be sitting here at a table of 7 tonight. I think the board is the greatest system of support for a superintendent, a school district, and a community. My greatest hope for this board is that they will dig into the work and, ask questions and learn and be able to engage with constituents and share and, give and receive information. Having a board who's well-informed is my goal. I can do anything to support that. Please let me know at any time. I think, again, a board who is able to really understand the work and share that effectively with the community in a way that's engaging in discourse is the best support for the district. And so to have 2 more folks supporting that work is really exciting to me. So thank you all for being here and
I just have 2 thoughts.
engagement, community engagement.
Oh, I was gonna say spring is quickly upon us and we should talk about who on the board will support you in finding our next student rep. That's just something to add for a future agenda.
Do you want to push off the 19th or the 2nd?
Historically, we would add the new board member in the fall, but that process takes a while and students commonly aren't available in the summer. And then that new board member, that new student rep would be added like just before budget season. And it was like kind of a harsh time for a student rep to be added to the board. And so last year, board member Sasai led the charge of finding Allie in the spring so that the newest board member could participate over the summer if they're available, but at least have the opportunity to start getting their feet under them before budget season. So let's add that.
Perfect. Thank you, Josie.
The other thing that I wanted to potentially add for discussion tonight was a statement from the board about the budget. We briefly discussed this last week. I feel a little bit okay with adding it since ultimately it's a statement that's being published to the board. If the board is amenable to adding that discussion, we have it mostly drafted, but we don't have full consensus, and so are we all amenable to adding that discussion? So I'm going to do that into.
Okay, I think that's certainly relevant to the topics and discussions.
Are we ready to move on, dig into the training portions? All right, so my hope tonight is a sort of follow-up from last week with the opportunity, since we have more time, to maybe actually read some things together and have the ability to discuss and ask questions. So I've developed an outline for myself to facilitate, and my hope is that this is mostly a discussion-based training through the board. So reading, interpreting, asking questions, answering questions, or collecting questions to be answered. Sure. So we would start with policy B1, board members on conflict of interest. Does everyone have a copy of this available? Looks like this. And I think newer board members should have them right. If not, it's also on the website. So if you go to the South Burlington School District website and click menu and scroll down to school board and click, actually, you can also find this one if you go under our district. You can find policies and procedures, and right at the top, board membership, B1, board members conflict of interest. Is the board amenable to, I or someone else just briefly reading through this now?
The whole thing?
Yeah.
Or do you just want to, are we gonna do that for all the policies?
Not all of them, but I think the ones that are shorter, the better maybe. I'm trying to find an effective way of. I know stand and deliver lecture is not the way that I learn best. Usually discussion is how I learn best, but also I think there's still a place to just read sometimes, so. Does everyone have a copy? All right, I will start. So, policy. It is the ethical and legal duty of all school board members to avoid conflicts of interest as well as the appearance of conflicts of interest. Definitions. Conflict of interest means a situation when a board member's private interests, as distinguished from the board member's interest as a member of the general public, would benefit from or be harmed by a board decision. Implementation. In order to comply with the obligations thus imposed, the board and its members will adhere to the following standards. 1. A board member will not give the impression that he or she would represent special interests or partisan politics for personal gain. 2. A board member will not use his or her position on the board to promote personal financial interests or the financial interests of family members, friends, or supporters. 3. A board member will not solicit or accept anything of value in return for taking particular positions on matters before the board. 4. A board member will not give the impression that his or her position on any issue can be influenced by anything other than a fair presentation of all sides of the question. 5. Board members will be familiar with and adhere to those provisions of Vermont education law which define school board powers and govern board member compensation and public bidding processes. 6. Board members will not conduct business with the district except to the extent expressly permitted by law and appropriately disclosed. 7. Board members will not use their board position to obtain employment in the organization for themselves, family members, or close associates. Should a board member apply for employment, he or she must first resign from the board. Avoiding conflicts. Board members will disclose their involvements with any entity or person having a matter or matters before the board. When a board member becomes aware that he or she is in a position that creates a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest as defined in state law or this policy, he or she will declare the nature and extent of the conflict or appearance of conflict for inclusion in the board minutes, and will abstain from voting or participating in the discussion of the issue giving rise to the conflict. Complaints of conflict of interest. When a conflict of interest claim against a board member is brought to the board in writing and is signed by another board member or a member of the public, and the board member against whom the claim is made does not concur that the conflict in fact exists, the following board procedures will be followed. 1. Upon a majority vote, the remaining board members, or upon order of the chair, the board will hold an informal hearing on the conflict of interest claim, giving both the board member and the person bringing the claim an opportunity to be heard. At the conclusion of the informal hearing, the remaining board members will determine by majority vote whether to A, issue a public finding that the conflict of interest charge is not supported by the evidence and is therefore dismissed. B, issue a public finding that the conflict of interest charge is supported by the evidence and that the member should disqualify him or herself from voting or otherwise participating in the board deliberations or decision related to that issue as required by Vermont statute, and or C, issue a public finding that the conflict of interest charge is supported by the evidence and the board member should be formally censured or subjected to such other action as may be allowed by law. So this policy conflict of interest is also in our, I always call this our policy governance policies. It's our 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 board policies. In 4.5, under our governance process, we have board members' code of conduct, and it pretty much says the exact same thing. I think it goes into a little bit more detail. I just wanted to read that B1 policy first, because I think it's the simpler, more English version. So 4.5 members code of conduct. And then if you look at 4.5.4, members will support the legitimacy and authority of the final determination of the board on any matter, irrespective of the member's personal position on the issue. I think that's like avoiding conflict of interest in the sense of personal matter. And 5, it's a 4.5.5 is also information about conflict of interest. And then it follows with implementation. And then it follows with a whole section on avoiding conflicts. And it has a lot of the same procedure for if there was a conflict of interest brought forward. So I share this to give us a general framework of how to avoid conflicts of interest. And the VSBA has this Essential Work of Vermont School Boards book. Also has some helpful information on page 55. Newer members who should be getting this book mailed to you from the VSBA.
If you don't, reach out to the VSBA to make sure that you get that.
Or me, and I can also make sure that you get that. So on page 55, they just have some helpful effective and ethical operations. They have a section about avoiding perceived or actual conflicts of interest, as well as like
this. Yeah, I just shared perceived conflict of interest is something that's been discussed, I think, a lot of board meetings versus actual conflict of interest, which is an interesting concept. I think, as I've onboarded board members, I've noticed that the perceived conflict is a really, it's nuanced, but it's critical for folks to understand.
I think sometimes in a world where you're innocent until proven guilty, sometimes the information that would prove you innocent can't be shared. And so then how do you prove you're innocent? And so avoiding perceptions of conflicts of interest, since you may not be able to provide the evidence to prove that you're innocent, would be problematic. I also want to, I'm wondering if I highlighted this later in the training. But I want to draw the board's attention to the fact that we do sometimes have a quasi-judicial role in district like matters. So sometimes there's a chain of command. There's a due process of how issues are resolved in the district, and sometimes the final decision by the superintendent is challenged, and it's the school board's role to review that evidence and either uphold the superintendent's decision or not. Typically, in my experience, when the board has had to do this, we have some training by a lawyer who is specializes in the issue and helps the board to really understand what their role is in that judicial hearing. But it is also important to remember as board members that you have a responsibility as a board member to be that quasi-judicial body sometimes, and to be highly engaged in operations of the school district could compromise your integrity in having to make that decision. So I point that out. It does happen. I don't think it's very often, but Tim, Laura, and we've all had to act in role before. And as you know, none of us have deep experience on the board. So I just thought it was worth bringing up. So what questions or discussion items do you have pertaining to this?
We want to bring up Act 171 just briefly. So I'm not sure who else is aware, and Laura, this may be a question that I could ask you to check into regarding the VSBA. In January, a new conflict of interest code of ethics law went into effect at the state level for all municipalities. We are a municipality by law, and I think Violet, there's some stuff in here about what we may need to do as a municipality as far as posting this on our website. I think this is gonna be a question for Joe as to how much of this pertains to us. But it sort of elevates the conflict of interest discussion. And we may, at the end, as we talk about our next agenda items, we may want to look at our policy around conflict of interest and update that based on background survey. There is also, just to let you know, if this ultimately does apply to us, I believe there will be training that we are required to complete as representatives of the municipality. So,
Typically, the VSBA, the Vermont School Board Association, will develop a model policy. And conflict of interest is typically one that's boilerplate, so rather than us all paying our individual, counsel to do it, there will be, VSBA will have something vetted. With any model policy, we cross-check it with our own policies, and our own, internal, practices, such as, does it conflict with the CBA? Or do we have different structures in place that would require our legal counsel to look at it for some reason because of differentiation that we have? From my tracking of 171 so far, this is not that. And what is the, I just gave my hard copies away. What is the date on that, conflict of interest policy?
2018.
Yeah,
So
so it makes sense to me that, this is being updated. Laura, will you keep us apprised if you hear that there's a model policy?
Yeah, I'm just looking to see if they haven't sent me anything, but I'm gonna actually, I'll email soon.
My favorite feature, and new board members will check this out. So as an administrator prior to being superintendent, and of course I use this now, I would look at VSBA model policies and then adapt them to our, the district's needs. That's something I would encourage you all to do, is to, scope out the model policies. It's really fascinating. And then you can see the nuances in ours and how they're adapted to meet our district's needs. It used to be searchable to the public too on Google, but they locked that feature down last year.
Something I was thinking is in a future training or maybe retreat, as I read through the implementation, particularly in like 6 or like 6, board members will not conduct business with the district except to the extent expressly permitted by law and appropriately disclosed. What would be some examples of that? Of what is expressly, like, what business is expressly permitted by law? I think I personally tend to approach this with like, I will do nothing even close to resembling anything on this list, but might be helpful to just the further specific and more defined things are, the clearer it is and the clearer. Sometimes I read policy language and it's super clear, so.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So number 7, board members will not use their board position to obtain employment in the organization for themselves, family members, or close associates. Should a board member apply for employment, he or she must first resign from the board. I'm not intending to do that, applying for a position of employment. However, I have 2 children who are studying education at UVM, and they very well may be student teachers in the schools in South Burlington. So after they graduate, if they were to go and want to procure employment within the area, do I recuse myself from the board at that time?
Absolutely not. Great.
Okay.
This is an excellent question, and I appreciate that it's not a hypothetical. So I have a field guide in place, which is a practice that we use for onboarding any student teachers. And they go through the HR process. Board members wouldn't be involved in the operational development of that field guide. Board members don't develop our partnership with UVM, which we have. And you wouldn't have any control over who we select for student teachers whatsoever.
Okay.
When your students graduate, I truly hope that South Burlington graduates want to come back and work in our schools, right? That's the hope of all of
Me
us
too.
parents, right? And so, board members cannot participate, in the hiring committee of teachers. The conflict of interest would be if you pulled me aside and you said, because I'm your only employee, right? So the board isn't, you're not talking to the hiring manager, who would be the building principal. So I don't even hire, teachers. I hire directors and principals. So if you pulled me aside and you said, hey, Violet, you want that, policy change? You know, make sure, my kids get teaching jobs at, you know, Marcotte. And, you know, I know you're not the hiring manager, talk to, you know, the principal about it or, you know, hang something over me. Or even if you aren't hanging something over me, just try to directly in any way influence that.
Right.
You know, you wouldn't as a board member reach out to the school principal or school staff anyway. But should you be friends and you are community members, you have connections, you know, should you see a member of the hiring committee or the principal out and about, you should not discuss the process. So saying like, you know, hey, I heard, you know, a couple of good Lawrence applicants coming your way, you know, if you try to influence it, that would be an ethical problem. But if your students earn the job through their own rights, that is perfectly fair game.
Okay.
I think you know, we can discuss further.
Well, you know, just in that context there, you know, for the board member to apply, I just thought it would be helpful, you know, to have that clarification. Yeah, it doesn't apply necessarily to the family members because that is specifically stated in the sentence box. So good to know. Thank you. Great question.
I also think it's like good to know and remember too that like you're in this not hypothetical, your children are going through the proper channels and process. It's not like they skipped the line or skipped the committee because you recommended them.
Right.
I think about, you know, sometimes I think about, I'm very well aware of the requisitions, open requisitions that we have. And I think about like community members that I know who might be excellent candidates. And what I do is I go to the people I know and say, hey, they're hiring, and that's where I leave it. Like, I don't try to attempt to say, like, I know someone who would be good for the job, you know, because that might look like me using my position to get my friend the job.
Likewise, our governance structure has parameters for my role. So I can't say, oh, I'd really like to please Jen, let me interfere in this process because I'm restricted from doing that as well. Right. Which is a benefit of policy governance, because it provides that, you know, dual layers of, really just ensuring that processes are followed.
Yeah.
Is it, I think I know the answer, but what would happen if you did not think you had a conflict of interest, and then as the procedure continued, you realized you did have a conflict of interest and you recused yourself? I'm assuming you wouldn't be injured for.
No, you could recuse yourself at any time that, even at the very moment, if it's playing out in real time, that you feel you have a conflict, or if you perceive that there may be a conflict and you're uncomfortable with that perception. And it doesn't have to be prepared, warned. It could play out in open session, you know, based on this information, I'm going to recuse myself at this time. You don't actually even know an explanation as to the rationale.
I also want to say, I think it's appropriate if a board member feels that somebody else has a conflict of interest, that it's okay to bring that up and mention that and speak to the other board member. So, you know, because following up on what you just asked, Emily, you may not realize it, but somebody else may perceive it as a conflict. So I think we as board members have that duty and obligation to speak with each other in that instance to ensure everybody's aware of what the perception is.
I have also shared with board members when I perceive there to be a conflict of interest. So if something comes across my desk where I have a concern, I will mention it to you. Still make your decision.
Absolutely.
Following what Tim is saying, I think that just in supporting board members and not assuming the worst, I think approaching them if you have a perceived conflict of interest, one-on-one, and giving that board member the opportunity to consider it and come and either claim or not claim that there's a conflict on their own. I don't think you were suggesting this, but I don't think it would necessarily be a great first step to, in an open meeting, say like, hey, Jen, I think you have a conflict of interest with your daughters. That wouldn't be professional or kind or respectful. So, and if you try to speak with that board member one-on-one and you don't think that your concern has been heard, you could come to me or Tim, as long as it's not about me or Tim. If it's about me, go to Tim. If it's about Tim, come to me. And, you know, we'll try to go from there. And then at that point, if we really do think there's a substantiated issue, then we would start with our complaint of conflict of interest. Any other questions? I think questions and discussion is going to be the best way to actually trade this information. I don't think me or someone else reading that is going to be the best way.
So you had posed a question about item 6, which was board business. And I can share a few examples of that. So the board participates in negotiations. Our most important business is hiring teachers. So the board, on our consent agendas, the board will see a number of critical business items. It is, I execute the contracts of the 3 lovely people in the back of the room, right? However, if it's a unionized group, I do not execute those. That would be the board. Our budget, the board approves the budget. That is critical work that you all do. Hiring, you hire your superintendent. That's critically important. Bids, you'll see on your consent agenda, and that's important business that you oversee, as well as accounts payable orders. So our finances, you have a hand in. So I think those are concrete examples of, while you are not working operationally, those are business related items that the board does have involvement and in fact I look over.
Clarity is helpful because I sort of consider that business to just be like responsibilities. But I see your point. And when I read that, I kind of read it like, I own a snow shoveling company. I can't, come to the district and say, they need to shovel the sidewalks, right?
You
Like,
might be our only bidder because our bid for snow removal, we didn't receive any, our RFP that we put out, we didn't receive any bids. And so we advertised it in the paper and received 1. So, there is a lack of competition on a lot of fronts in South Burlington, and we will all, there will be lots of familial connections, as we've already surfaced in our very introductions, right? So
that actually reminds me, in 5, board members will be familiar with and adhere to those provisions of Vermont education law and public bidding process. And I'm wondering if it would be worthwhile for the board for us to have, not tonight, but just like a brief training on what public bidding process is and how to adhere to it.
I'll have our ops director who oversees bids, Jean Marie Clark, come and share the basics on that with you. Do you want to do that April 2nd?
Sure.
Because the 19th is
Quickly, yeah. I just think, I know our ops director is the one who actually does all of that, but for the board to oversee it with integrity and know this is a majority new board. So
I noticed we're getting a lot of kind of one-off items, and I want us to also look at monitoring to see where that falls. And a lot of those, I'm thinking about asset protection, which is a monitoring report, and we do cover bidding in there. So I want to make sure that we're funneling, to be thorough in a monitoring report is the design, and to make sure that we should be talking about bidding under asset protection. And I want to make sure that we're looking at monitoring reports when we have questions like this and not just adding them as singletons to the agenda, so that the public can also have that record of the monitoring report as a holistic document. So I'm happy to do something on April 2nd regarding bidding. I think it should be thoroughly described in the monitoring report. I can tell you bidding is pretty cut and dry. We do an RFP for anything over $20,000, and $40,000 was changed from 20. And a request for proposal is the acronym. And because of the lack of competition, we typically reach out to folks because we're not hearing back, which is a common scenario we find ourselves in. And so we'll specifically, send it directly to folks or put it in the paper. Folks would then send their proposals back to us, and we make sure that we look at timelines. Cost, of course, is critically important. And ability to do the work. Timeline is probably second to cost. We've got a lot of bids coming up this summer with work that we've been trying to do since we passed the bond in March of 23. So that's kind of the high level process there. The board's role is not to select the vendor, that would be operations. Your role is to ensure that the process happened, that an RFP was submitted, and that the bidder did respond. So that's the board's role in it.
Yeah, I think just that kind of training. Having it be what I think back to my first time with the financial audit, and I came in as a board member genuinely thinking that I was supposed to have deeply understood this audit that was prepared by an unbiased third party. And I remember I came to that meeting and I was like, I feel woefully unprepared to do this. But then it was just like a really thick stack of paper that I did my best to understand as not a financial. Anyone with like any training in financial topics. And then in my policy governance training, I became aware it's not my job to understand the nuts and bolts of the audit, but instead to ensure that the audit was done with integrity. So I think asking board members to understand their role in the bidding process and having a training on that is worthwhile. And there's just several things that we do at board business where I think now is a really appropriate time for us to, as this team, just review what we're responsible for and how we know we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. All right, so with another question. Yes, sorry.
I'm just about kind of the difference, when you're recusing yourself. For example, last meeting, I recused myself from an executive session because I had a conflict of interest. And so I was not involved. I didn't go up to the room and have a conversation. But if we were meeting like this and we were looking at a bid to make sure it was done properly, it was like for my husband's company, I would say I recuse myself, but I could sit here while it's discussed. Is that right? But just not vote on it, or?
Yeah, the consent, sorry, you want to respond?
Okay, I actually think that you could vote on it because you didn't select the vendor. Your role as board member is to ensure that the process was followed. Do you agree with that, or?
So it's consent agenda, so we board members don't actually vote on the consent agenda items, so it's approved through consent.
Right.
However, I always advise board members, anytime there's finances that could directly benefit your family, do not vote on that. Absolutely abstain is my advice, because there will be perceived conflict of interest that is likely. And I think on something like a bid, it could very well happen that your husband's, well, I know where your husband works, but it could very well happen there that there could be, our circles will touch, and I would never advise a board member to put themselves in a situation where there could be a perceived conflict of interest, such as a bid. And with 7 people at the table, the pressure's relieved a bit. So, the quorum has changed, it's such a thin margin before. But again, you could specifically state this bid, although we're not voting, I'd like to abstain from conversation.
But I wouldn't have to
Recuse.
leave the room, as in,
No.
it's a different kind
You
of.
could sit here silently, anything in a public meeting. For instance, if we're developing a policy on something that for instance, we're discussing a policy and you are recusing for whatever reason, you would just say, I'm recusing myself from the discussion, because of, you could say, a perceived or real conflict of interest, and not participate in the discussion, but you wouldn't have to be.
Any other questions? All right, so we'll move on to B2, and this is technically all one agenda item. So if you think of a question that related to conflict of interest as it relates to code of conduct, which is what we're doing next, these classes. Does anyone feel really strongly that they would like to read the policy?
I'll read it.
Yes, we've had
I
story
read-
time with Sarah.
Then we can share, you know. Board members' code of conduct. The board commits itself to ethical, businesslike, and lawful conduct, including proper use of authority and appropriate decorum when acting as board members. Accordingly, 1, board members will represent the interests of the citizens of the entire school district. This accountability to the whole district supersedes A, any conflicting loyalty to a member may have to other advocacy or interest groups. B, loyalty based upon membership on other boards or staffs. C, conflicts based upon personal interest of any board member who's also a parent of a student of the district. D, conflicts based upon being an employee or a relative of an employee of the district. Or E, loyalty to staff or school employees. 2, members must avoid conflicts of interest in accordance with the policy on board member conflict of interest, policy B1. 3, board members shall not attempt to exercise individual authority over the organization. A board member will not give the impression that he or she has the authority to make decisions or take action on behalf of the board or the school administration. B, members' interactions with the superintendent or with staff must recognize the lack of authority vested in individuals except when explicitly board authorized. Except as expressly authorized by other policy or board resolution, members will not give personal direction to any part of the operational organization or assume personal responsibility for resolving operational problems or complaints. 4, members will protect the confidentiality appropriate to issues of a sensitive nature and other matters that may compromise the integrity or legal standing of the board and district, including matters discussed in executive session. Board members retain the right, like any citizens, to express their views as they wish. However, they acknowledge that the way in which they choose to exercise this right can affect the board's ability to work together effectively to build trust among members and an environment conducive to effective governance, interaction with the press, public, and other board members. The members of the board aspire to A, focus on issues rather than personalities. B, support the legitimacy and authority of the final determination of the board on any matter. C, exercise honesty in all written and interpersonal interaction, never intentionally misleading or misinforming each other. D, honor the right of individual members of the board to communicate with the community. E, make every reasonable effort to protect the integrity and promote the positive image of the district and one another. And F, never embarrass each other or the district.
Any questions? Start. Just take a minute to kind of digest that information. I would like to draw your attention to our policy governance 4.5 board members code of conduct. Much of what's in B2 is also in 4.5. I don't have a good explanation as to why we have 2.
Where's that from?
Which one?
Is that what you're pointing to?
This is the,
Oh, that's, is that from the VSBA?
no, it's
No.
the, I don't even really know what it's officially called. It's our school board policies, but
Policies under governance.
is that like officially what we call this packet? Okay. So, the 4.5 in this, I assume, was last updated in 2009 because it doesn't have a revision date under the section. Whereas this policy B2 was approved in 2018. So my sense is that the board at the time felt a more specific policy needed to be implemented to this effect.
I'm sorry, where does that one come from? Is it on the website?
There's like 2 sections on the website. There's like the school district policies. Which I think are ones that like
They're operational.
operational, and then there's a separate one, policy under governance, and that's just a single PDF.
Policies,
everything.
yeah, that's where I'm looking right now. Okay.
And I report out on the operational policies to you and monitoring. And the policies under governance are the set of policies tied to the policy governance.
I want to kind of expand, like, do you have a different interpretation of why we have 4.5 board members code of conduct and B2 board members code of conduct? Kind of in that guise of we report out on the operational policies, and we have policies under governance that explain our governance model.
Yeah, can I see you're talking about, so it's under the governance model. You're looking at code of conduct, if this is my interpretation, is that this is how you as board members are behaving with respect to your governance model, so your leadership and your oversight. I perceive B2 to be operational, and this is very much, like boilerplate, sort of employment HR paperwork, which we extend to staff members. So it's interesting.
Discussion topic for our next
Yeah,
meeting.
Yeah. So I perceive one to be operational and the other pertaining to your role in governance. And I think the reason it's clearly articulated as far as governance is because it's critically important that board members act ethically. One, in the last almost 3 years, one thing that really comes up is this, there's some subjectivity with some of the phrasing in B2. In particular, the phrase about embarrassing the district. We've had scenarios where board members have felt that others' actions have embarrassed the district, and others feel, no, this is my responsibility to X, Y, or Z. I was talking with Delina about this, who's been with us for 38 years, and what's the historical context here? How has this been interpreted and practiced? And essentially, the condensed essence of that is really support the district publicly and don't speak of it in a bad way. It has been, you're ambassadors of the district, and this isn't, tear the district down. And then every scenario that I can think of in the last 3 years where we've had this kind of tearing down perception by some, it's been linked back to this. And so that's how I would describe that holistically to you. But of course, there's going to be 10 different definitions of embarrassment at this table, right?
Sorry, I hate to ask this question again. So I see policies and procedures. I see these. You're saying there's 2. Where is
So,
that exactly?
If you go to the school board site,
Yep,
and there's an option called policy under governance, one of the buttons.
yep.
And then if you get to that page, it says school board policies under governance.
Okay, hold on.
Read,
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going. Policies under governance.
yep, you'll see it
right
says
there.
read the
Yep.
full policies here, click that hyperlink, policy under governance.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah,
so
it took,
that's-
I went to
that's-
look for it one time, and
Okay.
it took me 10 minutes to
Okay,
figure out
gotcha.
again where
There
it
it
was,
is.
so.
All right. Thank you.
Our approved budget, we've reduced printed. But I do think this is a document that board members should have a paper copy of.
I think we do.
We
think
do
it's in our
have
binder.
binders.
Yeah.
How is that one?
I think the most,
It's the second page in your binders, right after that first letter. The second page, first tab.
the thing about the code of conduct
Oh, yeah. Got it. Okay.
that I'm, most interested in, and it's just my personal opinion, is, supporting the legitimacy of the board. And I think that there's a lot that we can do on the board to support, and legitimacy comes from democratic process and voters. So I think that it's written in our code of conduct, and that I think doesn't just suggest what we don't do, it also suggests what we do. Legitimacy, I'm here for that.
One thing I would like to highlight as a part of this, as your chair and spokesperson of the board, I will handle all interview requests. And if I think that any of you have a particular interest and would like to speak to a reporter, I'll ask you if you'd like to chat with the reporter anytime we have these requests, but I would just ask that you do not engage in an interview with a reporter as a board member without checking with me first, because I might have more information, or it's just not a good, we should have a clear chain of how we'll do it. I'm not saying that I won't ask some of you to step up and be the one who chats with the reporter if you feel informed on the issue and prepared to speak, but sometimes reporters will reach out to the whole board about a specific issue and would just ask that you.
I'm just pulling up the South Burlington School District Communication Plan for the 24-25 school year. And the first item on here is board and communications. I will share this with you. I don't know if you want to go into any of this right now.
I was just thinking of it, when we were talking about. I guess board member will not give the impression that he or she has the authority to make decisions or take action on behalf of the board. That includes the chair. I don't have the ability to do that either, but I am like the designated spokesperson who's responsible for building the consensus and sharing the consensus of the team. So all I'm trying to say is if any one of you took it upon yourself to speak on behalf of the board with a reporter, you may not have the consensus of the whole board because the rest of the board isn't expecting to report their opinions to you.
Similar question, you noted that we received emails as an entire board, and I was curious about who responds. Are you allowed to respond? Will someone else respond before I responded to anyone? So.
Yeah, so typically when the whole board gets an email, if you have an opinion that you would like to share, you should email that to me. And it depends on the email. Sometimes it's just facts that the person is asking for, and I can fact check with the superintendent and share that information. Sometimes it will require more of a board opinion. And so sometimes I'll just say, thank you for your comment. The board, has heard you, and it would be a part of a bigger discussion. And that discussion might lead to a follow-up.
So you will acknowledge, as the board, that what is received.
Yeah, well, there is an automatic.
Right.
Yeah, that when people email the school board, if they get an automatic reply that says your email has been sent to the full board.
And then also I think Chelsea responded to a lot of people today. Like once she had collected the.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
And your indication that she's replied would be, you'd be like,
So as your chair, I'm responsible for notifying you that that I've spoken on your behalf. And I have a responsibility to make sure that you're aware of what I have said on your behalf. And to do that, I just blank copy you. And anything that I send that is a board position.
What about if someone emails me directly, like just me as a board member? The protocol for that.
Personally, I think that you could respond if you're being clear that you're responding as yourself and not a board member, although that gets muddy when they email your board email. But if they email you directly and not the rest of the board, jump in if you
Yeah,
think different.
that happens. You will get people emailing you. You may have spoken to them, or they may have spoken to you at some point and they'll want to follow up. That definitely happens. Again, it's going to be a judgment call. If it's on an issue that's before the board, during budget season, there's a lot that comes up, right? At that point, you just say, hey, thanks, I really appreciate your comment, and, feel free to come and share more at the board meeting or something like that. It really depends upon what they're talking to you about, but it's okay to respond.
And I can say I'm going to share, I'll share this information with them.
Yeah, absolutely, that's a good thing to do. If they come to you with an issue separately that nobody's heard before, they can read a letter, I'll, forward it to our board chair, so that there's an awareness, that kind of thing. So that's pretty much. the
If
best way to do it.
it's operational, your role is, those are delegated to me through our governance model. So if it's operational, you can say, this is an operational issue, please reach out to our superintendent. If it is something that they have, I'd say at first, reach out to me and I can help you with these. It could be a public information request, which would go through our office, right? We wouldn't be able to provide that certain information. If it is related to one of our monitoring reports, great question. We're monitoring X on X date. Love to have you at the meeting. Here's how you can join virtually or in person. Or, hey, I want to provide feedback on the snow shoveling bid. Great, our superintendent, like, here's our superintendent's contact information. Kind of a thing. As you're learning your roles, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd rather you run something by me than accidentally share something that could be detrimental to the district, just without you intending to do so.
Did learn the example of that, if that's helpful. I had a parent email me directly after, very soon after I became chair, about a sensitive student matter. And I needed to very quickly learn that I cannot be engaging about student issues. Like that's, that even though the parent is the one who is sharing it with me, as my role as board chair, it would be inappropriate for me to be having any of that information. And at first I thought, well, it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm holding the superintendent accountable for addressing this issue, which she was. And so I remember I called you and I was like, what do I do about this?
I don't even know which issue. I mean, this.
But I realized that in my response to the parent initially, it was kind of like, I'll look into this. And I do not need to look into student information. What I need to look into is attending to that the superintendent, in fact, has been handling this situation. And so that combined with, you know, when we think about transparency, I think about I lost my train of thought, sorry. This making sure that that our superintendent is attending to her responsibilities. I feel like the word transparency just goes into my whole mind out. What was the point I was talking
Maybe just that sometimes if it is a student related issue, for instance, that I'm dealing with it, you might not be able to share what the outcome is.
I was also going to say, at any time,
If it's a student related issue, you wouldn't be able to share the but just that it was addressed, right? That's not satisfying.
the reality is anyone at any time could email any one of us with any issue. When someone emails us, it requires that they sign their name to it in some way, because you can't have an email address without having a name attached to it. And I would just caution you as board members, becoming the recipients of information that you cannot share where it came from. I would caution you against creating these opportunities where people can tell you things they want you to know, but not tie their name to it. Because then you might be responsible for information that you're in a compromised position. And especially when it comes to like student data, I can't think of a more careful and legally binding and impactful information that you really should not have unless you're in the quasi-judicial board member role.
So how do you respond to that? Do you respond to that individual and say, thank you for your email, I need additional information, or do you not say anything?
Yeah.
And then do you CC anybody on? Would you CC Violet?
So if they just emailed, do you want, I mean,
Yeah, so if it's a student issue, I wouldn't suggest copying me on an email, because that person has a right to privacy. Say they don't want me to, you know, that to me is something that I feel is a violation of trust. They didn't email me, they emailed you.
Okay.
Your role as a board member, everyone knows where to find me, right? You know, you can put my email address in there, but give them the option whether they want to contact me or not. So a student issue, my role as a board member is not to, you know, attend to this particular issue. However, it is the superintendent's responsibility. Here's her contact information.
Okay.
And you should absolutely give me a heads up if it's student related.
So
Typically, I
separately-
would know about it, but
So separately, I may forward it to you?
yeah, and you could,
Well, but
I
I
think you
think
should-
you shouldn't forward it in case the person in question doesn't want it.
Okay.
If they want to phrase it differently, so.
so if it is, so we're mandated reporters. If it is something where there's an urgent safety issue, you need to make me aware of it. right? So you can, that's a responsibility. If it is something that is not an urgent safety issue, if it's my student is upset because their teacher didn't give them the pink marker, in kindergarten today. Thank you so much. I'd encourage you to reach out to their teacher first, right? And then you don't need to forward that to me. If this is someone saying, my child is being systematically bullied, that is something that I want to support.
Although to be fair, in policy governance, the separation between operations and policy, even the determination of like, is a pink marker something for a teacher or a superintendent? Really, we should even just say.
Right, it's an operational issue.
Goes to you.
Yeah, and it's a good point.
It's brought up the point where someone protecting privacy and someone might not have wanted you to know. I think I have a slightly different perspective on that, and it is that since our emails are a matter of public record and sensitive information could be redacted, but theoretically, I don't think that anyone should have any expectation of confidentiality when it comes to our email. And I also would just advise you as board members, when you're sending emails, a helpful trick is to ask yourself, would I be fine with this being published in a newspaper or on a social media site? And if the answer is yes, then it's probably good to send, and if not, you should probably drop the few times. But I tend to think if someone is contacting me directly about you, and that is what they want. They don't want you, they didn't want to contact you, they wanted privacy. Just in the same way, I would encourage board members to reach out to Tim if they had an issue with me. That is something I wouldn't just forward or CC you on. But any other operational issue, if it's not about you, I would forward it to you. And I would say in my response, sort of like, I will forward this concern to the superintendent, she's operations, and she'll follow up, or and often you already have followed up, but
on that point, again, okay, this would be a hypothetical. If someone reached out and there was an issue and it's intended to be handled as a confidential issue, and they're expressing concern to me or to any one person, you could respond to that person and say, thank you so much for your information, provided they then also gave them whatnot, right? What do you do with that then? You take that, do I forward that to you as the chair? And then that is something that is added to agenda? What do we do with that information?
well, I think that what I would say is, what sort of confidential information is the board responsible for? I tend to think like executive session of contract negotiations or
Personnel matters.
Personnel
There's very
matters.
few items that are considered executive items.
and even personnel matters. It's that, again, I would be concerned about starting to lead into biasing yourself to one side for that quasi judicial part of the process. So I'm trying to imagine. In general, I would love for the community to realize that they should not be emailing confidential information to board members, but I can't think of a lot of instances where it's appropriate for us to have it or be.
Okay, I can't think of an example where it wouldn't be operational. You guys are gonna get tons of feedback on everything from facilities, safety, curriculum, on how every issue of everything is run, and those are in the operations lane. As board members, if you have knowledge of something, you're required to act on it, as in share that information. Should it be, say it's a big deal and you make a judgment call not to bring that to my attention, you could be putting the district at risk. Again, I can't think of a situation where I don't know of a single email. A lot of these come to me also too. I don't think I've ever been caught off guard on when they're like, hey, do you know about XYZ? And I'm like, yes, here's the information. People typically email the board after going through the appropriate channels. But I think it's best, if you have a question, run it by your board chair. You can call me anytime. But they are typically operational. And Seamus, you're exactly right. Like my example about the marker, you're right. I was wrong. Like that's an operational issue. And you are right to say, contact the superintendent, because as board members, you can't obligate staff time, right? So you wouldn't be like, take it to the teacher. I go to take it to the teacher, that is my role to say. We do have a complaint process established, and what it says is go to the person directly first. So I will get complaints about all kinds of things, and I will say, you know, oftentimes folks will jump right to me and I'll say, all right, hey, did you work with the person directly, individually? Did you, follow the process? Exactly, and want to empower my teams and managers and directors and make sure that there is a system so that things are resolved appropriately. I don't have the inner working knowledge of every single conflict that occurs every single day, right? So it's the most effective management tool for making sure that people's needs are met and disagreements are resolved.
Chelsea, would you ask Joe, or you already know the answer, but just to give us kind of a final determination, is it okay to forward everything operational, or are there some cases where we should not? Basically, I guess the question for the lawyer is, are there things that we should not forward to the superintendent?
I'm happy to ask, just to double check.
Just so we have like.
Yeah,
definitive
I
answer to that.
can't think of anything. The only thing I can think of is, some sort of complaint or information about the superintendent, but even then.
But that
it's-
affects our policy because we employ the superintendent, so
Right.
that is in our lane.
But even to that point, operationally, solve it at the lowest level first. We are her direct employer, and so if there's an issue that comes up that we need to check into, it is our responsibility to say, hey, what's going on with this?
But we might want to solve that more sensitively if it was something that might affect the relationship between that employee.
I see. You're assuming, I was not assuming employee, but,
We do have the responsibility, the district has to give due process to every employee. So that's a Vermont labor law. So every employee deserves due process. And in every contract, you will see there are ways that feedback can be shared and addressed. This applies to union and non-union employees. So all employees have feedback that has to be given in certain ways, so.
Well, it would just be, it'd be useful if Joe just has some like, yeah, don't send, and everything else, then.
I can tell you, everything is a public record that you get, so.
and you can't prevent someone who's should you, but I think it is helpful for, everyone to be aware that your email is a public record with very few exceptions. I mean, negotiations and like, that would be, but
Contracts.
the contract, but not because just because it would affect the integrity of the process of negotiations for that information to be shared. So,
I can't think of any protections outside of those where board member emails haven't been included in Freedom of Information Act, which is really errs on the side of transparency, which is a good thing.
I've got one idea, which was someone who maybe knows me, emails me and just wants to share a thought, and then says, please don't share this with Violet, or would it be okay if I didn't? It's not asking for any action, it was just wanting to share an opinion on something, or just if it's explicitly asked not to share it with anyone else.
yeah, I think, if they say that in the email, you should reply and say, you should know my email list. And so if anyone, including Violet, did a public records request of your email, you wouldn't be able to prevent that from being shared. And
I'm sorry, I'm wondering if we could ask Joe this, we all have signatures. If in our signature line, there could be something to that effect, right? So that it always goes out in our email from the board, our email address. That says, all emails are matters of public record, something like that. I just out of curiosity, because that way it's
Laura, would you check with the SBA on that to see what
I
the
can
party
check.
line
I
is?
mean, yeah, because I've been in public school for, at Essex High School, 15 years. Yeah, we know as teachers, it is all public.
Right, but then
It's a-
that lets the person
But-
writing you know that if you're responding.
Yeah, I'll ask
Right,
about that because I don't know one person that has a signature line that says that. No administrator, so I've just never,
We
But yeah, I will have
had that with the city. There we are under our, name, all of our contact information. There was a blurb that said.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, that's interesting though. It's a good idea. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, I figured like, I've just taken it for granted that everybody.
We
knew
still
that,
have
but
best
yeah, that's, yeah, I will ask
So,
about
and it
that.
takes the pressure off.
That takes the pressure off.
I feel like in different emails that I've seen, depending on different roles that people have, I have seen footers that are kind of like. Sometimes they're specific to that person's job, so if they're a crisis interventionist, they have crisis resources at the end of all of their emails, or. If I've received communications, I think it would be teachers, but sometimes, there's like a little thing at the bottom that says. This could contain information about student data and, right, so I think something along that line that's board appropriate is a great idea.
I think, so I'm really thinking about your scenario. If it's someone who you have a close relationship with, you could get yourself in a conflict of interest situation very quickly with, here's info, don't tell. That's a way that you can violate this, policy pretty quickly. And again, anything operational, I would have to, it is my role to work on that, and it is your role to make sure that I am attending to operational issues, so that would be sticky.
Yeah, I'm gonna think about.
That would be you getting someone else putting you in a sticky position, so knowing how best to unstick yourself.
I did listen to the video. I've been listening to the video from last week, the recording. And one of the things that struck me, I didn't know about the blind copy, so I did see your email and I heard Joe talk about that. I'm like, oh, yeah, tape over, reply to all. I heard all that. Which is good advice. I think one of the things too, just regarding best practices, is on the signature blocks. Like you have your contact information. I had included my personal cell phone, and when we spoke yesterday, we suggested do not do that. To have your personal cell phone on there. Because again, that could become a matter of public record potentially, right?
I think you want discretion, so, this is your decision. I would say if you want to meet with a constituent and you would like to give them your personal cell phone number, you can do that. However, I think discretion is important. I have gone through great lengths to protect my personal information because it has been violated quite significantly. And that's, I think that as members of the public, we could deal with heated issues. And I think board members would be wise to exercise discretion and be thoughtful about, the availability of, yourself and what that means for your family. That's my advice to you. You can take it or leave it.
It's also, in a public records request, if you're using a personal device, that device could become a matter of discovery, and so a judge or a team of lawyers could go through all of your personal, emails or your personal text messages or your phone records, just to find the information that is relevant, and that in and of itself could be problematic for you. So, the district does offer school board members, a computer to use for board business, and I always recommend that you do that, or if you use your own device, just know that that's a potential eventuality, but
Which is why I stick to your work, your school email addresses. Recommended.
And I have one other tip around email, something I do at work all the time, which you say to me many times. When you're typing your email, go into the CC line and type in some gobbledygook. And then what happens is if you inadvertently go to send that email, but weren't quite ready, Outlook will warn you, hey, I don't know who this is. And it gives you that, if you don't accidentally send an email that you're not ready to actually send. So I don't know how many times that saved me at work, but it's great if you're doing this kind of work as well, because you're responding, you're not quite sure, did I say it right? It's a great just sort of catch to make sure it doesn't go out before you're absolutely right. Just a thought.
I do the same thing, but if
Do you?
I don't put the name in, I write the email and, in my draft, the last thing I put in something sensitive is the name.
Like, I forget who I was writing
Same
to, so I was just through the little
Yeah,
gobbledygook and
yeah.
like the into two line.
Yeah.
Parameters around our automatic. Sure. What do you mean, like,
No, we don't necessarily have guidelines.
Well,
Different,
okay, there is, now a report an educator, report a school board member, report a public servant, there's a website that, is it's a federal website where if you have your pronoun on, because you asked the question, I'll provide this information, so, should you decide to put your pronouns on that, that could be reported by anyone who sees that. I'm not suggesting one way or another, but I just want you to know that, that's a new website that emerged, last week that we're just learning about this as we, navigate changes and try to attend to the law.
I do think that we should get just maybe a note clarifying the procedure on this from the lawyer. For example, in the Vermont state law, Title 1, Chapter 5, Subchapter 3, Section 42, it says, except as otherwise provided by law, information that can be used to identify a complainant who alleges that a public agency, public employer, official, blah, 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 has engaged in a violation of law, waste, fraud, or abuse, or unless the complainant consents to its disclosure. So that's like a case where if we were to decide how to send information from our email to the superintendent based on the fact that, well, it's public anyway, it might not actually be public because it's a complaint about a public official. For whether it's legitimate or not is not up to us, but so it would be good. And also I think we have a lot of other stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
I think it would be good to just get like bullet points, like yes, yes, no, or no, no, yes.
can you just reframe the?
I can send it to you after.
Okay, that would be great, and yes.
All right, so you'll follow up with Joe on that after, and
Specific.
I also will follow up with, Daisy and Karen from an internal perspective on how we're gonna address that.
Can I ask, so sometimes I add chair after my name when I'm sending emails, if I feel like the person I'm sending it to needs that information, if I feel like it's relevant, but I don't always, it's just a personal choice. I would like to ask this team if you would prefer that I add that, for clarity's sake.
Yes. I would say to do the same. I think it's important for folks to know who board leadership is.
I think, just personally, like my leadership style is very team and it felt a little like. But I also understand being clear is helpful.
I think for board members, the same board member or, I think that role clarity is a chance to have.
All right, any other questions or discussion for now on policy B2 board members? There is a model code of ethics for Vermont school board members on page 56 in this book when you get it, if you're interested, and you can kind of see what they recommend and how that our policies measure up. All right, so next I was just going to review board member roles and responsibilities. So we did talk about this at length with Joe last week, and I wanted to start by just asking if board members have had a chance to think about what they learned last week, and if you have any questions or further discussion. Or if you'd like me to just a high level review. We also, in our policy integer governance packet, Policies 3.3, 3.4, 4.2, and 4.4, I think relate to our roles and responsibilities. So I'm happy to read that if you'd like. They're not very long, so I'll just read. 3.3 is in our board management delegation section, and it is delegation to the superintendent. So I think by being clear about what we've delegated to the superintendent, it helps board members individually to know what responsibilities you are relieved of because we have delegated them to the superintendent. The board will instruct the superintendent through written policies that prescribe the organizational ends to be achieved and describe organizational situations and actions to be avoided, allowing the superintendent to use any reasonable interpretation of these policies. Accordingly, 1, the board will develop policies instructing the superintendent to achieve specified results for specified recipients at a specified cost. These policies will be developed systematically from the broadest, most general level to more defined levels and will be called ends policies. All issues that are not ends issues are defined here are means issues. 2, the board will develop policies that limit the latitude the superintendent may exercise in choosing the organizational needs. These policies will be developed systematically from the broadest, most general level to more defined levels, and they will be called executive limitations policies. The board will never prescribe organizational means delegated to the superintendent. 3, as long as the superintendent uses any reasonable interpretation of the board's ends and executive limitations policies, the superintendent authorized to establish all further procedures. The superintendent is authorized to establish all further procedures, make all decisions, take all actions, establish all practices, and pursue all activities. Such decisions of the superintendent shall have full force and authority as if decided by the board. 4, the board may change its ends and executive limitations policies, thereby shifting the boundary between board and superintendent domains. By doing so, the board changes the latitude of choice given to the superintendent. But as long as any particular delegation is in place, the board will respect and support the superintendent's choices. Do we want to stop there? Because I'm also happy to go into 3.4, which is monitoring the superintendent performance, which is our goal. But we can stop first and review 3.3 if there's any questions or discussion.
So when was the last time executive limitations was modified?
So there are 11 different detail policies, or I guess technically 10, but of the executive limitations. All initially established in 2009. 2.1 treatment of staff and parents and guardians was last updated in 2012. 2.2 did I say staff? Treatment of students and parents and guardians was last updated in 2012. 2.2 treatment of staff was last updated in 2011. 2.4 financial conditions and activities last updated in 2018. 2.6 emergency superintendent succession was last updated in 2011. 2.7 asset protection was last updated in 2023. 2.8 compensation and benefits last updated in 2012. 2010 curriculum development, 2.10 curriculum development and review last updated in 2017, and 2.11 equity was added and last updated in 2022.
I think that's my biggest thing that I don't understand yet is, I know about, is why would we establish an equity policy as a limitation instead of setting out equity as
As a what?
as an end?
As a
Yeah.
penalty.
I think that's what a lot of districts are doing, and folks are removing equity policies. VSBA no longer has a model policy, and there was discussion about having Winooski just implemented a policy regarding like students, I don't know the name of their policy. We had a teacher asking us about implementing a policy regarding, students who, you know, residency of students, not, as in their, help me with the phrasing of this.
Well, but to clarify the question, so did you just say that some places are adding equity to their ends policies, or some people are taking it out?
I think your question is a philosophical one. It's not necessarily, like, I think you're gonna get opinions. Because I think you're asking, like, why would this be an executive limitation? or not? And it's a great question, and I think there can be robust arguments made on both sides potentially. As it is now, it's an executive limitation.
And sorry to interrupt, but were you saying that there's examples of districts making changes in this area? Do you know about, and what changes are they making?
Districts deciding not to have policies in place based on the changes happening at the federal level, because we have to operationally respond to them, and they could be quickly outdated based on how things are changed. And how policies have to be in compliance with law. And a way that a district states their true values are, as you said, in the ends policy. A reason to have a policy on something is because you want it monitored. So you want it to be reported out by me, the disaggregation of student achievement, right? Which is a piece of the equity policy. So that's a requirement. If the board is looking for information on, you know, equity, that's a way to get those.
So now, since it's in executive limitations, we don't monitor it.
You monitor the equity policy.
And is that normal that we monitor everything in executive limitations?
I think some of them are more robust monitoring reports and some of them are more like reporting, like asset protection is an example of there's not really like a report to monitor, but it's more like the audit.
I think it would be like, and maybe Laura, you can ask the VSBA, or, you know, it'd be helpful to get more guidance and philosophical guidance on that question. And I also, and so you were saying, because federal stuff is changing, that means that policies that have been put in place have actually are now illegal. And so districts are choosing to roll them back.
That's probably too specific.
Well, so affirmations, for protections of immigrant students is the policy that Winooski just implemented. And that is something where we as superintendents had really intentional conversation around, do we implement this as a policy or not? And the district can have practices and guidelines. So we have a framework around our practices. But if it's a policy, should there be legal change, then the board is then I'm gonna have to bring it back to you for updating, and that could be pretty consistent. The other thought here is that if it's a policy, it could be sort of challenged or under attack, right? Whereas if it's tied to ends, it's sort of solidified as a given through the vision, right? So VSBA, you know.
Oh, wait, no, let me start for a second. So if you're saying, if it's in policy, it's one thing, if it's in ends, it's another thing, but I thought ends are the policy.
The ends is the overarching, they are, the ends, policies are the means. So sometimes it's not best to have the details in there. And I think that's what the VSBA was doing when they no longer had an equity policy. They weren't saying, in my interpretation, they don't value equity. They were saying, as the Vermont School Board Association, given that this is something that is in limbo right now and could really change, maybe we don't want to advise districts to have a policy detailing the means, which could be reported critiqued, a lightning rod for, opening up something for discussion.
So they have the decision to remove the model policy was prompted by, this is Vermont School Board Association. Recent legal developments, including a January 9th, 2025 federal court ruling in the Tennessee versus Cardona case that excluded gender identity from Title IX protections. And the U.S. Department of Education stands in withholding federal funds from non-compliant institutions. So these developments potentially affect the implementation of the model policy. So the VSBA is calling on state level leaders, including the Agency of Education, the State Board of Education, the Governor's Office, the Attorney General's Office, Human Rights Commission legislators and the partners of education to collaboratively determine rules. So they weren't saying they didn't agree with it.
Right. They were saying, be careful, we don't advise this because it could have legal implications.
It would be,
I would-
well, it'd be great to like hear more from them, maybe where they're thinking, maybe an update from them on this.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, not urgently. but-
So they are drafting a new policy as we
I
speak
see.
with updated legal references and language. And our commitment to public education to providing a safe, welcoming, inclusive environment for all students, especially our most vulnerable, is as strong as ever. So they're trying. This is really, it's gonna be hard for us. You gotta, if you're trying to stay within the law. When you don't agree with it. So that's gonna be.
Which is why some districts in our region are choosing not to implement policy around protections for students. So some districts are viewing that as a protection in and of itself. That's right.
That's.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. I'd have to bring it to you for revision all the time as things change.
You know, and it's interesting because. Remember, children have every right to education, so I mean, this is, I'm not entirely clear this is all we do. So, I mean,
I can safely say there are questions on the legality
Yeah,
of
I have
that
a lot of questions.
left
on
and
the
right, which
legality
is
of this.
why I haven't introduced the policy on
Yeah.
protections for immigrant children, and it is fluid, and like Dan said, I'm gonna. We would be making changes to things left and right because your policies have to be consistent with law.
I have another question. Do you want to take it or?
Can I just suggest that we look at our time here? We're at 10:05:08 and we're scheduled to move on to still have public comment discussion, school board retreat planning. And I move that we move those to maybe next week's agenda. Or
I would like to cover those. I
don't want to, because we have to be later, I don't want to go past the 8
So
o'clock.
can we go to public comment and put the onboarding and things next week? Yeah.
I guess actually, the last thing I was gonna say, we are about halfway through what I have prepared is that, since we have a majority new board, Tim and I would like to offer, to do onboarding trainings with you individually. And I was also thinking perhaps maybe for some period of time, there's standing meetings so that you know when you have an opportunity to come with your collective questions or concerns or ideas. And that might be, scheduling wise, a more cohesive way of working together. My schedule is pretty sporadic, and so sometimes you may not get answers from me until 11 or midnight or 4 a.m. depending on how long the kids are sleeping. So we just thought if you would like that, we're offering.
I think it'll take 30 seconds, but the similar question to why we would, I've heard that the cell phone policy is implemented as operational instead of as either an ends or an executive decision. Is it for a similar reason?
Yes, but it's not a policy. We don't have a cell phone policy. I implemented cell phone restrictions and I did that through procedures, not policy.
Also, as we were kind of walking down that road, learning about it, there is legislation going through this session that might supersede anything we would have created anyway. So it it sort of seemed like a waste of time to, when our CEO could just implement restrictions and we could wait and see what this should be.
It is, right, and it's that nature of the nimble procedure is a really effective tool for our district. And I can modify it at any time without 3 public meetings and board feedback in between. Right? And it's something that I could literally make into compliance very quickly. And we knew the cell phone conversation was getting a lot of attention, and so you know, our teams felt that it was something that could be effectively operationalized, and our students, our student board reps have reported out on, you know, it periodically. So we've gotten, as was requested by the board when we were having conversations about implementing the policy. In hindsight, I think it was the best approach, you know, being, you know, we started this in late August, and here we are now. And, you know, I was at the high school today and I saw one phone, and I was, I had the privilege of being a History Day judge. And I saw one phone, and it was from a retired teacher, got a text and pulled out the phone and looked at it, and the students were like, which was really great. So you know, I think of course there's always bumps in the road, but I think it was the right decision for us at the time.
So Chelsea, can we go to public comment, just a couple minutes on
Yeah,
it?
it's just like the last thing I wanted to say, just kind of, I think it's important for new board members to know. In policy monitoring, we monitor all of the 2.0s in this policy under governance. Things like in the 4.0s, like agenda planning or chairs role or code of conduct, those wouldn't have monitoring reports because they're just like stipulated, but they're not monitored.
And you will see them where it says policy law. You'll get sometimes statutes or policies on the agenda. So like I drew your attention to having our students come in because I was pointing to how I was showing you this. Or, you know, you see on agenda planning, you see 4.5 code of conduct here. So those are operationalized and not reported out on.
It's interesting. I actually feel like it should be free. Anyway,
Yeah.
just to help, right? Like, I think one of the best things to help board members understand is like, where are your teeth? Like, where do you do the work that you need to do? And it's in monitoring. And we have a calendar that we'll approve as a team about when we want to monitor what policies. And we have some ideas about how to better engage our community and improve how we have been monitoring. I don't think we have time for that conversation, seeing that it's almost 8 now, but if you want to know how to best support the district, really familiarize yourself with the policy of the governance. I have read them several times and I still read them and still go back to them, and it can be helpful. Like Seamus, I felt like the training last week was effective because we had a real question, and the first thing you said is, where does that fit into monitoring? And that was like, yes, exactly. That is your role as board. So. Okay, with that then, would we like to move on? Are you gonna make it?
Oh, no, I'm fine. I just want to make sure, like, so are we saying school board retreat planning we're going to move into next week's agenda?
Well, I think that one is not necessarily planned. It doesn't necessarily need to get like the details, but.
Like whether a yes or a no. And I was also thinking kind of the same thing about public comment. I mean, really, it's for policy governance. When people are making comments, like we are not to engage with the public because it's a business meeting. And I realize that that's really weird. So, I mean, so it's a public meeting, but not a meeting with the public. And Jen, I totally got your like wanting to respond, because it is, especially when children speak, you really do feel it. And
But once are we moved on to this agenda?
I have moved on to
Yeah, great.
So what I would propose is, it is maybe we meet every other week. I would propose maybe a forum once a month, once every 6 weeks, where that's what we do, is we do engage. Because this is really, it's confusing for the public if we engage with some people but not others. And it makes me mad and it's confusing. So we have like business we need to do. And then you have a meeting, a forum, where for 2 hours, that is what we do, is we speak to the public. And I think if you say that out loud, like I watch a lot of board meetings. And, you know, if you say, like, this is a public meeting, we are going to be listening, not responding. So if people understand that, they might not think it's so weird, because that is
It
a
goes
lot.
back to legitimacy.
It does go back,
Well,
to-
and so I think what you're saying is also that there's like business meetings,
and that's what this is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's business.
and I think that
meetings.
is not clear,
And I don't think
not
it
clear to the
is,
public.
I don't think it's entirely clear to the public, and I think it has made people mad, but really, it's a business meeting. It's a public business meeting, but not a meeting with the public, and so I would advocate for a meeting with the public, and I have tried. My first year on here, I did listening sessions, very few people came. I did listening sessions this fall, nobody. So I think what people would really like is for all of us to be together. I think that's what they want in the superintendent. And we have that meeting, and I understand, like, asking for a third meeting is a lot. And, you know, I don't have young children, so it's easier for me to go out, and so maybe we wouldn't need everybody here. But I think it would be really important for people to be able to engage with us. I think that's what they've been asking for. I would like to grant that, and I would also like to not be here until 11 o'clock, because I'm up at 5:15, and I have to engage with children. So I need to have all pistons firing in the morning. So
Yeah, best practice.
that's my, I think I've.
Yep, I think, Laura, you've done a nice job of articulating that this is a meeting of the public, in front of the public. It is not a meeting with the public, right? This is where prepositions really matter. This
Right.
is not a meeting with the public. Public engagement is something I really want the board to engage in. This is not the time to do it. You also have to attend to the details that there are members of the public who you are accountable to for the business details, and they want to hear those business details. That is one of your responsibilities and functions. So providing appropriate engagement in different forums. Best practice in public comment is that the time allotted on the agenda is used. It's divided by the number of folks in the room who want to provide public comment. If it's 10 minutes and 10 people, everyone gets 1 minute. It needs to be consistent. It's been very confusing for our community as there's been inconsistencies. I think if there's a board in South Burlington, the community's been really clear that there needs to be specific parameters. Another technique that can be used is the board chair saying, are you all here to talk about X topic? Great, we have 10 minutes. Select 2 or 3 people, 2 people to, share information. These are, it could, and these are,
So that could get ugly.
that would be an extreme situation, right?
I have done that. When I know
Yeah.
that we have a room full of people about one issue, when we're about halfway or so through, I'll say, this is what we've heard. If you have a different point or another thing that you need to express, please come up. But I try to encourage the public not to be redundant.
I think one thing that my impression, and this is the kind of thing, that since I'm new, I see it freshly, is that we need to invite, like, tell people what we're gonna say it, and then tell them what we just said. And in that sense, like, maybe it would be useful to remind people that at the beginning of the board meeting, it's like, well, welcome to a business meeting. I'm not prescribing the words. I would presume to do that, but it's like, welcome to a business meeting of the board. As you know, next week is a public forum of the board. During this business meeting, we're taking public comment in a shortened format so that the board can complete its business. Next week, we have a much lighter agenda, precisely so that, and just because it's the kind of thing people forget about, and even if they've heard it once, they'll forget it, and then they'll want to bring it up, they want to talk a lot at a business meeting, so it's just like, people forget, and there's constantly new people rotating in and out.
I could not agree more. And the other thing, one of the reasons is that you do have to stick to the rules. So when you have 50 people here, they don't say, oh, well, hey, you're not,
You're not being.
you're not being transparent. Well, so you have to have, this is the teacher in me. You have to have a predictable way of doing things. I say the same thing every day, and it is March. And I spend one day, I don't say it, everybody forgets. And that, because it's kind of counterintuitive, right? It's not really, it's a little weird. But I think if we say, we've got 10 minutes. And, you know, like these kids, they came up and they talked and the whole thing, and if there were 50 kids, we'd have to say, okay, we've got 10 minutes, we do want to hear from you. It's just that this, if we do it every single time, it won't be weird.
And it helps the legitimacy of the board because we're saying we have made time for you.
It has to be on topics not on the agenda too. I think we've, you know, when
Yeah.
the board veers, it's very confusing and people feel marginalized. The board is also, you know, opening the district up for potential litigation on discrimination if there's inconsistencies on how you're treating people. So, you know, from my perspective, I don't moderate public comment, but I can tell you that effective boards have business meetings and they divide the time and the community is clear on the parameters. And it's on, there's no veering away. We're not talking about, you know, the guidelines as stated. Don't mention individual names. And, you know, if this is, oh, nope, that's on the agenda. And just to be consistent, and I understand that it is difficult to be perceived as like cutting someone off. We want voice. There's a variety of ways of doing it. The mechanism is not the public board meeting where district is not part of the structure. However, it is going to be this community engagement activity, and we'd love to hear from you then.
Yeah, and I had written something up that we could pass out, but anyway, so.
I just spoke my opinion in here. I think this community likes to participate in the meetings. I think, you know, this is we have some very involved people. My only concern here, and this is maybe where we can do this in the agenda a little bit better, is we will, and I will say, I haven't been on the board for a year and listened to public comment. As we're discussing particular topics, we do have community members who will ask very good questions or make very opportune comments that I think add to our discussion very effectively. Where I think we run off the rails is if we let that take over that particular discussion time, right? I think we're well aware of the times where we're going to get a lot of public input. Budget time is one of those, right? There are other times in the year, so we can be, let's schedule that extra meeting or block out more time. I would suggest that as we look at what is on our upcoming agenda, to be clear to the public about whether we're going to take comment or not on a particular topic we're discussing, we should state that in the agenda. There should be like our number 4 discussion items. If we don't want public comment, it should not be in there. However, if we put in enough, I'm speaking. If I put in there into the agenda, public comment as part E, that's clear that at that point in time, we would accept some public comment. But I really hesitate to just say we're done taking comment, because again, I feel like a lot of times people who are listening in and take the time to be in the meeting and be there live and listen in have very, very good things to say. And I would be reticent to cut them out entirely of the process. I think trying to get them to send an email later is not effective when we're thinking about it at the time. I would always encourage them to send the email, but there are times I would like to hear the public's perspective on a particular item we're discussing. I just think it should go into the agenda as, yep, we're talking about it. We're going to take some public comments so they're aware they can speak at that time and they know exactly when that is.
I was just gonna ask if it would be appropriate for us to form a committee to say, make a recommendation to the board about this.
I've done it. So we can talk about it if I've written up. Yeah.
Well, just so that a committee of the existing board members, so that they would be able to advocate and have all, and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And according to the VSBA, discussion items, you should not be taking. You can on action items. So you have the board discussion first and then you take public comments.
So if it's warned for action.
We have not made that clear. If something's warned for action, we have our discussion and then I don't recommend, I actually think, but it's true, you can do that, but when it's just discussion items, you don't have to take public comment.
I think that there's,
And that's right in the policy.
it seems like there's enough to talk about that we probably should, I mean, isn't this an appropriate use for a temporary committee that we come together, the people who are interested about it, we write up a recommendation to the board, and then we dissolve the committee, as opposed to,
Makes sense.
I don't know, I mean, that would be,
Oh, you're saying like a full committee, like I guess I thought you meant like, not a forum of the board.
sure, 3 people say, so not a quorum.
I actually feel like there's lots of feedback here that we can build consensus and move forward. I think I hear several ideas. Starting a committee is certainly.
If we don't start a committee, then isn't it up to you to kind of collect everything? I just don't want to put more burden on you if there is a lot of discussion we have on that.
I think that this group is more in line with their wants than not. So I actually don't think it will be too challenging. I see several strategies forward. One thing I'd like to point out is the orientation of this table is very confusing. Because doesn't this look as though we are inviting someone to come speak to us? If we were having a business meeting, wouldn't we be sitting around a
Right,
table looking at each other?
We've mentioned that so many
Um,
times, like we should be, yeah. It is
And so then when
confusing.
we have like community forums, we would hold this orientation because that invites someone to come and to speak. What I'm hearing is, it's really important that we treat everyone the same and that it is clear to the community how they will be treated. We need better guidelines or more clear guidelines or repetitive guidelines to help the community to clearly understand when it's their opportunity to share and when we're conducting business.
Yep.
So obviously, but I've been reading this, Robert's rules, and that can be very confusing. I mean, there's a couple of books going around that are just completely overwhelming, but in looking it up, because I heard one of the things that you were saying in regards to, say you've got 10 minutes divided by the number of people in the room and whatnot. But from what I understand with Robert's rules order, and again, very new to this, everyone has the right to participate in the discussion if they wish before anyone may speak a second time. So that is, I think, one of the concerns that I've heard from the community is, or had viewed when I've been in sessions where you don't have there may not be an opportunity to get up and to speak. So I could be wrong about that, but that would be one of the things that I think we would want to better understand, so that you could say, these are the rules of engagement. And if people know what to expect when they come in, and hey, this is an opportunity to comment or not, or this is a time where we can dialogue, and this is a time where we can't, I think that would really help to set people's expectations and not have them being so frustrated.
The worst case scenario is for a community member to feel like they are trying to participate. That they're not, because whatever they were trying to participate about was already a passionate enough issue, and to layer on, like, that's worst case scenario.
Right.
And then they tell their friends that they weren't heard.
Yeah.
So in Robert's rules, that part that you just read, was that speaking about the members of the board, everyone has the right to speak before anyone may speak a second time, or is that?
That was, everyone has the right, under Robert's rules, everyone has the right to be heard, period. The public comment period is a time for citizens and residents to express the views and inform the council. After discussion, the board president calls for a vote, and those in favor and against signify their vote. So again, there's more to learn, but I want to say that I saw something like that language specifically in here too, and I'm tabbing everything, but I did not tab them.
And I just wonder, isn't this sufficient? I mean, we have 7 people on the board now. It's clearly there's questions like, should we have special meetings? Should we have things listed out in the agenda as being open, like Tim was saying, open for discussion or not? Like, should we have 10 minutes top to, why would we not form a committee to just make a recommendation?
I mean, we can, it's a lot of work. And not that I'm shying away from work, I'm just saying, is this the issue that we want to put our energy on? Or is this something that we probably can develop consensus about? I think that this board has a tremendous amount of work ahead of us, and so I'm cautioning that, I'm not saying it's not a great idea, just cautioning is that the best place for us to put our foot forward. A mechanism that we use this budget cycle is we held a meeting where we had organized public comment opportunities, and basically the way that it was designed to work is we tried to warn the community that we were going to be discussing specific budget questions that we had heard. And invited the community to email their questions if they're available or come to that meeting to ask their question. And any of those questions that we could compile ahead of time, including board questions, we gave to our superintendent so that she could make sure to have all of the information ready to go to answer those questions and invite any relevant administration or staff that she felt was needed to have here to help answer the questions. And we put the topics of the most things that we heard as the board up on a screen so the community members could see what we were talking about and know when we were going to talk about what. And it was not a regular business meeting. It was meant to be more of a like community engagement, public comment, questions and answers sort of session.
But keep me at the high level and help me understand, like, why is it work to form a committee?
Sure, because we have to agree, let's go monitoring. I'll just, model.
Because I feel like there's a lot of things that, you know, for example, I'm hearing Laura wants to say, Tim wants to say, you know, Jennifer wants to say.
The thing is, so it's right in Robert's rules. Some bodies, especially public ones, may invite non-members to express their views, but this is done under the control of the presiding officer, subject to any relevant rules adopted by the body and subject to appeal by a member. Often by rule of practice, time limits are placed on speakers and relevance is closely monitored. That is right from that book. So I'm not really sure where
I thought, Tim, did you say that discussion was limited to action items?
No, I said that.
And so just so I think we need to wrap this. You know, but I agree with everything Laura said. I think public comment should be limited because we do have a lot of business to go through and we're experiencing the fact that right now that we run over time, which is unfair to people listening and expecting things at a certain time as well. My point is that where I don't think we should do is simply say we have 5 minutes at the start for public comment or 10 minutes, and that's our only time. I think we need to just be a little aware of the issues that we are bringing to the agenda. If we feel that's a place where we would like public comment, that should go into the agenda. So the community is very clear about when we will accept comment and when we won't. Because as a community member who sat here for a year, wondering if I could speak or not, I wasn't even sure after a year whether I, you know, could I come up and ask a question. Sitting here as a board member for the last year, there have been many issues that have come up where somebody has spoken up, asked a question or been online, made a comment, and I've been like, oh, wow, okay, that was great to have as part of the conversation. So I just don't want that to get shut out. I think it should be controlled and totally agreement with saying.
And I understand what you're saying, and I feel like it's a combination, because having what you're saying, that input, while we're talking about it, to have in our minds, but I also know, as everyone knows, it's very unsatisfying to just say your piece, and then everyone say thanks, and you go back and sit down. I mean, so I like the forum idea too, where there can be a back and forth as well, so something to, you know.
I would offer a way forward is for the board, if you're gonna consider committee work, I think the board's most important work right now is community engagement. So how is there gonna be a community engagement committee and you all are gonna, you know, make a recommendation to the full board? I think that is what is critically needed. Again, you have a responsibility to perform the business, and there are constituents who want to see those at the set, you know, the times you warned, which is tied to open meeting law. So the consistency, I think, is an absolute necessary thing, and it must be enforced because, as Laura said, it needs to be done, right? Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And here's the rationale. If that is done in the absence of having organized community engagement, it's never going to work because folks are going to have that unmet need of needing to engage. So get the community engagement wrapped up and be consistent in the business meetings.
Or start the meeting at 5:30 and have like a 45-minute, I mean, I don't know.
So here's what I propose. Let's add to discussion for our next meeting, public comment discussion. And at that time, I would appreciate if board members would come forward with their recommendation. And if you can email it to me in advance, great. But if you'd like to committee, have a committee charge ready to go. If you'd like to see different guidelines, have guidelines that you'd like to suggest. If you think we should do, scheduled Q&A forums or community engagement, whatever your vision is. Prepare that, and if a week's not enough time, we can move this discussion to 2 weeks, but I think it would be most helpful if we could all form opinions about what we think the best path forward is, see how much they overlap or don't, and make a decision. Yep. All right, so next we have school board retreat planning. Did we move that? I haven't available to move that.
Well, I just wanted a thought of, we should or should not have a retreat. I think for my part, it seems like we should have a retreat.
Yes.
And so it seems more like who is, how do we wanna, like, for example, should we do what you just did with the public comment and say like, come to the meeting next week, having formed a thought about what we should do and send that to you? Is that all right? Or does anybody not wanna have a retreat?
This is recommended as best practice for boards. I would highly recommend it. I will work with Chelsea and Delina to provide a number of dates and times for folks.
Well, and I do wanna clarify that we, as a board, can also set the agenda. Like, that would not be an operation.
As a board, as board members, you can email me or call me or text me or tell me items you'd like to see on the agenda, and I have a responsibility to put on the agenda. And sometimes I might say, hey, our next agenda looks really heavy. Is this acceptable to you? Or at the beginning of every meeting and at the end usually of every meeting, we also have agenda planning. So in that this public capacity, this is also an opportunity for you to say, I'd like to see X, Y, or Z be added. But in terms of the actual creation and learning and everything else, that's me.
So along that same line, somewhat separate, school board retreat planning, great. Training, which is separate from retreat, right? So I had provided a note the other day. I'm interested in doing the VSBA training, and I think it's the weekend of May 3rd and May 4th, I think. Sometime in May. I'm interested, and I thought that the woman who had sent the email out, I think Stephanie from VSBA, had asked for a response as of today. And I don't know if you saw my note and if that was provided to her, because I am definitely interested in doing it.
I did see your note. I did not see her. So.
Oh, it was today.
I'll follow up today.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. I mean, is anyone else interested?
It's Debbie.
Debbie Singheiser.
Yes.
Yeah, then I had advocated really hard for all of us to do a train. I think that's great that you want to do that. That's awesome. It sounds really great. Because I think like doing a training together would be.
Yes. The district will pay the fee.
I think what I thought we were gonna talk about related to training was what trainings are we interested in? How much do they cost? Are they within our board training budget? And that sort of, but,
Okay, could we talk could we put an agenda item for the next time to talk about what trainings we want?
yeah, it's just that this specific training that Jen's referring to, the deadline to be put on the rosters today. I'm sure the folks.
Yeah, Jen, I think if you that should be fine.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
This is different than the thing we were suggesting.
It's different than what I'm suggesting. This is a day-long thing, which also sounds really great. And then Jen, you get like a free half hour.
I'll send it to you. It's from Debbie Steinheiser.
So what I'm hearing is the board wants to have a retreat and each of you will kind of provide input on your vision for what that retreat would look like. This is quite a bit of work to do between now and next week. And we have a full agenda of other things for next week. Do you want to put retreat planning in maybe 2 meetings from now?
I would suggest that we're not gonna do the retreat for a while, so I think we have time to.
Well, isn't that somewhat open discussion?
It is, we standardly do it in July when our board business is a little bit lighter so that we can.
But that also, if insofar as the retreat affects our ability to act together and cohesively, waiting until July might be, it might make us less efficient for this. I think we would.
I think that brings up an interesting point, which is, what is everyone's idea of a retreat? Because historically, it's been, I've facilitated one retreat since I've been on this board, and prior to that, we did not have board retreats. We had some policy governance trainings, which are different. So the retreat that we did wound up being a self-assessment as a board team, and then some planning and visioning here. I think it sounds to me like your vision of a retreat would be more like team building activities, and someone else's vision of a retreat might be learning about policy. So I would just say, perhaps we will discuss retreat planning, not next meeting, but the meeting after, to give a little bit of space, because you're also going to be crafting your opinions on public comment guidelines on top of the other monitoring and reading that you need to do. But maybe be very clear about what a retreat means to you, or what you would hope to get out of a retreat with this report.
And to clarify, is that due next week or the week after that?
The week after, but I'll put it in my board update email where I support deadlines and. Okay. So we also had, are we ready to move on to our next discussion? So we added school tour discussion.
Yes, so new board members, and thank you, Laura, for, moving this forward. We want to get you in schools. We want you to see what's happening. And I wanted to do this, it's a time sensitive issue, so I've arranged for school tours to happen on April 1st. I will send you the schedule. They're going to be starting at Orchard School at 9 a.m. and ending at the high school at 12:45 p.m. And it's in the board update doc if you want to take a look at it. Would love to have you all participate for any of it that you can. I understand that folks have obligations during the day too. There's no magic of schools without students, so the point is to see teaching and learning. I'm happy to do facilities related tours also, but this is to just really see the life of the buildings, which requires teachers and students to be there. So I know, that isn't gonna work for all of you, so.
Violet, when is that happening? And that was in your communication?
Yep, Tuesday, April 1st, starting at Orchard School at 9 a.m. and then ending at the high school at 12:45. And you have this in the ordinance. Let me, Delina, and Chelsea know directly if you're interested, so if there's a forum issue, we can resolve it. We will be talking about board related items, because it's all teaching, learning facilities, so. That's it.
Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
So I am. The next topic is just a statement from the board about the past budget. Jen, last week I prepared a statement on behalf of the board acknowledging the budget pass. And I read it out for the board members seeking feedback and basically general agreement for me to go ahead and post this on the Porch Forum and send it to the other paper and post it on our website under our school board page. And we didn't have total consensus, so I worked to build some consensus over the past week. And I have a new draft ready to share, and then we'll take further feedback. So it reads, to our community, as members of the South Burlington School Board, we want to express our sincere gratitude to all community members who participated in the vote on our school budget. We recognize that this was a significant decision for our community, and we deeply appreciate the support that allowed it to pass. At the same time, we acknowledge the concerns and perspectives shared throughout this process. As we move forward together, We want to assure you that every email sent, every conversation held, every article written, and every public comment shared over the past several months has been heard and will continue to inform our work in the year ahead. This budget represents an investment in our schools, our students, and the future of our community. We know that challenges lie ahead, and we do not take lightly the responsibility that comes with this support, including our fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers. The board is committed to strengthening community connections, fostering open and productive dialogue, and working collaboratively to find thoughtful and sustainable solutions. Our goal remains clear: to ensure that South Burlington schools remain strong, vibrant, and in a position to serve our students and community for generations to come. Thank you for your engagement, your trust, and your commitment to the success of our schools. Sincerely, the South Burlington School Board. So that is the most current draft that I would say we have prepared with the most consensus from the board.
So I have a question. One of the things, and that's great, during the review that Joe did last week, like, let's just say hypothetically, you put that out on a Google Docs and you asked for any feedback on that. I heard that we're not allowed to provide feedback on that, but if we had feedback that we would like to provide, like, take a look at your email and maybe, suggest some language, how would we do that?
So typically the way that I have done this is I'll prepare it in an email and I'll send it to the full board if you all want blind copy. And then you can respond to that email, you can hit reply, and it will only go to me and it will have all of your feedback. And then what I seek to do is hear the feedback of the whole group and put forth a new draft or a new version that incorporates all of that. Okay.
If you ever share a Google document, it would need to be view only so that there's no commenting
Which is why,
and no real-time editing, because that's a meeting.
which is why I tend to do it via email, because I could just prepare it in a Google Doc and do view only, but I find that to be clunkier than for me personally.
And there would be no, like, it'd be harder to, if like somebody asked for, well, what was the version that the member saw at this time?
Right.
You have to like go to all this extra effort to find the version.
Because I like that email. The one thing that I would like to see about potentially including in there is what is some of the feedback that we've been hearing and how are we potentially going to be addressing that going forward, right? Like even the comment regarding, we're gonna have a public session perhaps, and maybe it's premature to write about that, but I think people would benefit hearing from some of those things because I hear it and it's great, but it also is a little bit of kind of motherhood and apple pie, if I'm being honest, you know what I mean? Like, okay, that's nice, but where's the teeth in that? Like, what are we doing a little bit differently now, potentially, right? You see what I mean?
I have a couple thoughts on that and just in general and. I think. My issues, you all know, is the legitimacy of the board. Which directly affects our ability to raise money for the district. And I think that, one thing is that we should use quantitative ways to say like, what is the grade level of the language that we're using so that we can be sure that it's appropriate for public speech. And so like, generally, maybe that's at the 8th or the 9th grade level, just to make sure that we can reach the broadest audience. Like I showed a constituent a letter and his wife took 15 seconds to read it and he took over a minute, and so like, I think it's a very important to accessibility that we write them and then use tools to make them more legible. And then I also think that, we should be aware that in this political moment, we were just talking about equity stuff getting outlawed. That people have, particularly the people who don't support us, our budget, are gonna be the ones who are triggered by kind of, I know maybe this is what you were saying about like motherhood and apple pie. I don't want to misinterpret you, but it's like words that we associate with respect, they may associate with just kind of being stonewalled. And so it's like, if we can try to adopt adapt to the times, which are much more. So, both of those things, and that might be hard to do all in one statement, you know, maybe it's too late to put out the statement because it's already been a week, I don't know, but,
Because I think what I'm hearing is this new board would like the opportunity to address the community with our commitments as this team. And so perhaps what I might recommend is the intent of this letter was really just to acknowledge that the budget passed, express gratitude for the support. And I think where we're hitting the sticking point is acknowledging our commitments moving forward and what have we heard, what are we going to do? And so perhaps they need to be two separate statements. One statement that acknowledges the budget passing and has the gratitude that is due. And then perhaps this board would like to craft another statement that is sort of a, hi community, this is your new school board, this is the feedback we've heard, and this is our plan moving forward about how to address the feedback we've heard. Is that a better?
The things I really liked about that is when you were talking about this last time, I didn't feel like it was really my place to really contribute to what you were gonna say about the budget, because I did not have the budget and I didn't do all the work that was put into creating it. So I really like having it be, you know, this was from the budget, the board that developed it, you really want to say thank you, because you worked hard on it. And then we can say, and now we've got 4 new people, and what are we wanting to do moving forward? And then use some of the language that feels more like with what you're trying to express. And I didn't want to take away from what the other board had done, because it really wasn't my work, and I didn't feel like I should really have to say something to say about it.
I think great. That's great. Really good.
So with that in mind, if I were to put out this statement as written, with the understanding that it's meant to acknowledge the budget pass, which is in the hopefully now. And then add that as spokesperson, I'm going to draft a letter that I think represents what all of you were trying to say, and seek feedback from you about that letter, whose intent is to introduce this new board and explain what foot forward we're putting.
I think there's still the original concerns with the letter that it's written to a 12th grade level or 13th grade. It uses words that are and phrases that I think are going to run us into problems with people who voted against the budget, who we will need for any future bonds, any future, you know, and so like, for example, the section where we say, rest assured that all your feedback, and it kind of lists out the various forms of feedback, all of it has been heard. I mean, one constituent, when I feel like, I mean, I'm just gonna say, with my wife, I said, well, what if I told you that we had listened to everything you said? And she said, but that's impossible. Because so it's like, we have to, I think, and again, I apologize for saying we have to, I'm saying, in my opinion, we should be careful of making claims that the public will regard as kind of either bureaucratic or insincere. You know, it's kind of like what they used to say about Obama is, as soon as Obama said, now listen, or he used to have this phrase that he would say, he'd be like, no, here's the truth. Look, and then you immediately knew that he was going to say something that was kind of risky. And so it was actually, he would take away from his own legitimacy by trying to claim it. And so it's just, you know, I think I still have the concerns with this.
So I guess my only question would be, if you send it out and PCC everyone, then can you maybe have an opportunity to provide some comments or some words, some recommendations perhaps that might help?
I
Sorry.
mean, on this version, that is what we did last year. And so at this point, I'm trying to find the way
Okay.
forward, because eventually there's gonna be no point in the.
I think we need to.
This is the order right now. The agenda
I know
item we're on
we're
is budget
pretty fast
statement.
I just want to say, I think we're beating this up too
Yeah,
much. I mean, talking about stylistic and stuff, I agree with you, but I think we need to get this letter out. think we need to entrust with our board chair that she's gonna write an appropriate letter. She's heard our feedback. It's her job to craft the letter and send it out. I don't think we cannot collectively write this thing. It just needs to go out. We need to thank our community. We can't just sit here and argue this to death. It's just
Can we take a
trust in
vote
our,
on that?
what's that?
Can we take a vote on that?
It's just a letter going. I don't think we need a motion to
It's
send it
a
out.
discussion, it's more just discussion, not action.
I just think we should just trust our board chair to write this letter. She's heard our feedback. And she's taken everything into account and send a letter out.
I'm just hearing the idea of the two different boards and maybe speaking to, this is one board and
Yeah.
this is the new board and, you know, just trying to make it not like, I understand people, not everyone feels like their voice is being heard, so maybe.
Well, I'm being spoken for.
If I may, the look is, I think some of your feedback is not representative of the board that worked hard on the budget. And so I think it's difficult to put out a message from the board that wouldn't represent the board who worked on the budget.
What's the deadline for next week's other papers out there?
Tuesday,
I
so
think
it's Monday, and
Okay, so if you send out what just written to everybody. If I'm saying it right. What would what time would you need to get feedback? So that you can make corrections, send it right back out? And like, if you send it out tonight, would tomorrow night or Friday morning be enough time? You to look at feedback from everybody, incorporate their feedback and get it out to the other paper for the deadline.
yes.
I think the issue is you're gonna continue to have conflicting feedback.
Yeah, I think that at this point, it's not that I need more clarity on how the group feels, it's that I am not building effective consensus within the group because, I don't think that there has been any significant edits that would, respond to Seamus's concerns. And I think a lot of Seamus's recommendations contradict the feeling of other board members. So, I don't. I actually really do think that the best path forward is for it to be two statements and address what you're saying. I think that would be the most inclusive path forward. At the end of the day, I think a statement about the budget needs to go out and it's already late.
Yep.
And I do hear the feedback that you want to address the community with a new foot forward. And I think that is also something we can do in a second statement. That's not related to the budget.
When did you look to have that second statement?
I'm open to hearing what the group thinks is timely for that.
I mean, I think the budget is the thing that gets the most community engagement, and so if we go on record saying whatever we say, the second feedback or the second engagement will be much less because we will have kind of already spoken about, you know, our view of that and the opportunity, you know, the opportunity to get in the other paper to say, well, here is the board's view of what happened in this election. It is something that's gonna get read. I don't know if we actually would send it to the other paper or wherever we send it. So I don't, what I'm not feeling is confidence that we are, that we have an effective process for writing the statements that come out of the board, which in my opinion are one of the most important things that we can do, because otherwise, if we propose things, but we haven't got built consent, it won't be effective.
I think this is really illustrating how much badly we need to treat, so we can learn to gel and work together. That's how I'm experiencing this, so I don't know how we like moving forward right now, but because
I agree. I think the process I've used to draft statements for the board this year has been relatively effective in terms of board consensus. But I think that's probably representative of the board that just generally agreed with each other more. And I'm not saying that disagreement is a bad thing. I actually think it's an excellent thing because it better represents everything. I think that the priority is that a statement about the budget needs to be made. I think to not say anything to our community after passing this budget would not be acceptable. That's my opinion, not as chair, as Chelsea board member.
And then a follow-up statement. James was saying, that was from the new board.
It's, you know, it's tough.
I think we can belabor this.
I do wonder if maybe, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
If, as you suggested, some possible revisions or more ideas just to get it out on paper to Chelsea, sent to her and then let her draft it and trust that that's what's going to be done, as you suggested.
If you'd like, would you like me to read what you suggested as an alternative statement? Or and see if the board
Sure,
has an
is it, I
opportunity?
think, yeah.
Because I appreciate Emily that, but I'm, to be honest, as the spokesperson of this board, I don't think I need more revisions or edits. I think that there's just blatant disagreement about what the statement should say. So, Seamus, if you're amenable to it, I'll just read to the board what you suggested as. So Seamus recommended to the community, thank you for voting. The FY26 budget passed with 52% in favor and 48% against. As your elected representatives, we've heard two messages. First, voters support South Burlington's tradition of excellence in schools. Everybody wants the best learning experience for kids. Teachers and staff are beloved members of our community. In the coming year, we will prioritize student achievement and teacher morale. Second, voters demand fiscal responsibility. Everybody wants South Burlington to be an affordable place to live. People living on fixed incomes are disproportionately affected by tax increases. In the coming year, we will prioritize controlling costs so that funding is sustainable in the long term. Some costs and taxes are controlled by the state. We will tell you when that's the case so you can take action. The best way to support our schools is to keep building bigger majorities and moving forward. So keep voting, keep giving us your feedback. Thank you.
And that was the one where I analyzed it and had the 7th grade or to 8th grade reading level.
So I think that's a good message. I would comment on this message. The issue here, Seamus, is that when I listen to that message, I hear the ones who voted for it support everything. The 47% who voted against it are more concerned with fiscal responsibility. Having worked on the budget and heard a lot of people voted against it, not because of the fiscal issues, because of the budget itself. So I think there's a message that's coming through in what you wrote that basically says to me, if I voted against it, it was because I think it was too hard, right? And maybe that's not what you're hearing, but if we're talking perception, I'm seeing a very split down the middle dichotomy of you supported it, you support the schools, voted no, you're more concerned with the fiscal side, right? So this is where I think just a simpler message of thank you for voting. We heard messages, it's just a little kind of mother and apple pie kind of approach, right?
Sorry, Tim, what you said something about the people who didn't, you saw it as, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, as I was listening to it, you let off with the 51% versus 47%, and then your primary points were, you know, we support the schools, and then there's the fiscal responsibility. So I equate that with the people who voted yes, supported schools, and the people who voted no wanted more fiscal responsibility. And that's having worked on the budget and heard a lot of people. There was such a mix for votes against and for votes for and stuff that I hate to split it down the middle like that. I think
And what else do you think?
I'm for Chelsea's statement that she wrote that.
No, what else do you think? The people who voted no, if they weren't thinking of it from a fiscal point of view, like.
There were people who voted no because they didn't like the fact that we were cutting counselors, that we were taking things out, right? It wasn't so much, it was too high, it was that what was up for cuts was, they were the pre-K stuff, all of that. I mean, we sat through a lot of that.
Right, but they have to know that if a budget's voted down, it's not going up, it's going down.
You would think,
further.
right, but that's not, I don't want to interpret anybody's and how they feel about it. I'm just saying that we heard a lot of people say they were gonna vote no because. So the only reason I'm just talking about the message here and
That's great feedback, yeah.
that is what I think we need to be very careful that we can set a message out there, but there's gonna be a second message that gets heard. And so we have to be somewhat generic in this thing, right? We don't want to unintentionally send a message that when you read between the lines, somebody interprets it one way or the other. That's why I'm saying I think Chelsea's message was pretty straightforward. I don't think we're too much on the side of one or the other. We've already had feedback. Chelsea's got to get it out. We need to get this message out. We cannot belabor this anymore. I think it's just.
I think maybe if we remove the part about. Or rephrase the thing about where every single thing was taken into account.
I was thinking that you like, just take that out entirely.
I'm happy to do that if that, when you said that your wife said, well, that's impossible. I'm curious about that because certainly I'm not like in everyone's homes at all times listening to all of those conversations. But what I meant with that is every email that was sent to the board was read. Every public comment that was stated in our board meetings was listened to. Every conversation with board members was had, and feedback that was given to board members was shared with other board members in our meetings. So what I meant was all of the ways that our voters engaged in the democratic process with us as the board, like we engaged too, and it was valuable and necessary and encouraged, and I want that to continue and be stronger. I definitely did not mean that I've heard everything everyone had to say about the budget if they didn't direct it to me or another. board.
I totally believe that you said that with the best intentions. What I'm saying is that we live in an era of lack of trust in public institutions. And when public institutions insist on their own credibility, they actually take away from it.
I think, I've heard a lot about, so I think that I would vote that this be stricken because there's not agreement among the board. And here's the thing, we heard from every single position, folks saying, bring it back, right? Staff advocating for their positions. We also have ed quality standards, student assessment data to respond to, and, the metrics. I linked in the board presentations. Here's all of the parameters that we have a district responsibility to attend to, and those are not always consistent with community feedback. We heard testimonial around pre-K, which was not consistent with like staffing guidelines, right? So I think there's a real difference between creating opportunities to hear feedback. Hearing it is different than if something is shared, it doesn't mean it's not heard if it's not moved forward. And I think that clarity needs to be provided to the community at another time. I don't think the budget statement is the time to do it. We receive a lot of conflicting feedback too, right? Like, so I think that is something that we talk about in budget season with the community or in a public engagement session. I'm not hearing the agreement on that at this time.
I'd like to move to postpone this discussion. This is,
I
we cannot come to consensus.
I think we're very close to consensus and we can't postpone this because in my view, if we're gonna postpone this, we're just not gonna send it at all. So I would like to suggest that we strike the section that says, as we move forward together, we want to assure you every email, every conversation, strike that whole section.
Great.
And still add in what would now be the second paragraph. The board is committed to strengthening community connections, fostering open and productive dialogue, and working collaboratively to find thoughtful and sustainable solutions. Right. I want to add fiscal responsibility as I read it the first time. It's just not in this draft that I'm looking at, but committed to strengthen community connections, fostering open and productive dialogue, working collaboratively to find thoughtful and sustainable. I'm so tired.
It's that one, yeah, it's fine, it's
Fiscal
fine.
responsibility there. Is everyone fine with that? So, thumbs up. Great. There's our consensus. We did it. Okay.
That was easy.
Whenever you get tired, that's when things. Okay. So next we have our next agenda item. We are now moving on to agenda planning, set agenda for March 19th.
Gonna add 2.3 treatment of community so that we don't have 2 monitoring reports on April 2nd. We're adding board members as employees under discussion items. We are adding student rep process for recruiting a junior under discussion items. We are moving the retreat to discussion items. And
Discussion items on
the 18th, 19th of March.
it won't be on, like, it will be on April. I think for April 3rd.
Treat you, we're gonna put that. further in
Second,
the future.
board Zoom. And we had board trainings for the 19th, which is things like VSBA, PG, open meeting law,
What more?
discussion
the
of
stuff that we
trainings
did.
such as like Debbie supervisors, you know.
Okay, discussion of the trainings we're interested in doing, not actually.
Chelsea, in the beginning, did you mention something about, the next week's agenda or whether we're employees or not?
SBHS staff reductions. Which is a,
2 different topics. So you want to talk about, I don't think you should pigeonhole this, call it SBHS staff reductions, because you've got constituents who are also going to say, well, add back my X, Y, or Z at my elementary and middle school by the equity matrix for staff less, right? Like folks are telling me that. So I think you should just call it staffing and budget. And I think the board needs to address that.
I don't want to add this agenda item as though the board is going to discuss adding positions back. I think it's an opportunity for the board to respond.
It sounds like there is not clarity that positions won't be added back. So I think if it's discussed as overall staff and the budget, if the board wants to say this is the budget we approved, this is what we're doing, I think it shouldn't be specific to one school, but
Is it like, it's our opportunity for us to say. This is the guidance we want you to, like, in this situation, this is what we think you should. In the highest level possible. Right, it's our opportunity to give you guidance from us so that the ultimate decision about the situation is more. From a policy and a board perspective than the superintendent.
exactly, like if the board is saying, yes, we're gonna open up the budget again and add positions back, the board would say that. If the board is gonna say the community approved this budget, we're sticking to it, the board would say that. So I'm saying the board should make a stance on the whole budget, because then you're gonna get other constituents who are like, hey, what about us?
Right, you can just open things up again.
So I think there should just be clarity. There's a spider right there. The other topic was, whether board members are employees. Do you want that on the 19th or the 4th?
The 19th.
That's like a 2-minute thing, yeah.
Well, Mike, just with the packet I got and some of the,
Then you and I should connect on that to make sure we get the same message.
okay.
I'll talk with you.
Did you want to have a
Talk with
bigger?
me offline too, because I want to know what you are.
Okay,
It's kind of like the. Boards, stipend,
There was something. about-
fingerprinting, background check.
Yeah,
And training, like the training, the BSBA, the training like the accelerator, like all those things. People, and I think maybe putting together some thoughts about what. Our vision is for that, and then you can collect those thoughts, and maybe that's for next week or the following week, I don't know, but.
Sorry, I'm losing.
no, I think, well, but I want to just clarify. Based on donuts of discussion, so the community is aware is technically whether board members are considered employees of the district, because that was the question that came up in donuts of discussion. And what the response was that I got, I researched it and Joe weighed in on it too, so I'm happy to share that, and then if there's further discussion.
There were some things that came up with me with that packet, might need to go in there, if we can't. If there's no agreement on our little discussion.
Well, that's beyond me, I'm just gonna share what I.
Right.
Right, so.
So I don't want it to
With
be any
that,
further than
it's just a couple of things that came up.
Okay,
Would it be right to call it like board formal like, discussion of the board members' relationship to the district?
Relationship with,
Formal discussion of the board's members' relationship to the district or something.
relationships slash employment, whatever you want.
I think it's pretty much covers. Sounds to me like it's. I mean.
I'm gonna call it board member employment status.
board member employment status.
And that
There
was,
we go.
allow and ask questions.
Yeah, we can expand on that.
If you have questions, could you send them to me in real time so that, because I'm anticipating I won't have the answers, now to look them up.
So folks, we have a very large agenda for the 19th. I just, the questions are good. You're a new board. I would encourage you to be thoughtful about
This could push to
paring
to
things
the,
down.
to the.
But I think we could do a lot better.
Yeah, this one isn't critical.
We need to stay on the schedule,
I
We've
would-
already pushed things
Well,
off.
who
a few
defines
times,
what's
so-
critical? I'm just saying statements like that are, we have to define together what's critical.
I think
No,
monitoring is critical. Monitoring is critical, I would say.
Right, right. If this, my intention for this topic, Seamus, was just, here's what I learned. So if we have to choose between monitoring and some other stuff, this is not a critical topic. That's all I'm saying.
So I think
If
Dan
it's
is bringing a separate board for it.
Then,
Okay.
if there's too much on the agenda for the 19th, I would recommend that we push this topic to the following meetings. It's not this important.
If we can't get through it,
With you,
push it back.
Okay, so I'll leave it on.
keep it on, let's push it back.
I know we're going late, sorry, and again, but, and I don't mean to throw a wrench into things, but one thing that did come up, that I've, from some of the emails that I've seen and feedback and watching the video from last week. One of the questions is in regards to rigor in schools. And American history, honors American history, and one of the questions there. So I know there's gonna be a session next week on the 20th. I don't know. Are people sure, is the board available to go and listen to that and to hear some of the dialogue there? And then what would be the board's opportunity or position to go back and to take a look at that? And is that our position to do that? Because driving some of the rigor in schools and, you know, I have my own personal opinions on that as a parent and some of the feedback I've heard. Just curious, you know, where that gets benched or with all of this discussion too.
So generally, selecting the curriculum is not a board role.
Yeah.
Because we are not curriculum experts. However, monitoring that there's a curriculum in place is our role. And we have 2.10 curriculum development and review. And we typically monitor, or historically have monitored that policy in October. But we could request of the superintendent, but technically, we can request to monitor any of these policies anytime. It's disruptive, I think, to the process to just like, I don't think it would be a good habit to just emergency monitor policies all the time.
Yep.
However, at any time, the board may request a monitoring report about a policy. We standardly seek to review them at least annually and sometimes more often. So does that answer your question about like?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I guess the question is because there's been such public comment in regards to that in particular and emails that I've seen on that. I mean, it obviously seems like it's a topic. Again, this would be, I would say, a hot button topic that the community wants to know more about, like, hey, South Burlington School District, high school, what are you doing about this? I'm just wondering what role we have in all of that or what we can do to help facilitate some discussion or help influence some of the change that may need to happen in regards to that. I don't know. Those are kind of reasons.
I think whatever we do, we have to provide. Make sure, like the superintendent just said. if we are saying the budget is a decided issue, we should give her that guidance, and if we're saying the budget is an open issue, we have to give that guidance, and whatever it is, you know, she is executing what we say. As opposed to making decisions on her own, which might be politically very untenable.
So the board can support academic rigor and instruction financially through the budget development process, right? And the mechanism for you to show that priority. Operationally, you hear constituent concerns, you bring it to me, and I have said, I've asked my staff to be available to meet with any constituent one-on-one for meetings, which they've done. They've done an FAQ to provide information. I've asked that it be put in newsletters and added to the website, which has. And I've asked for the community forum to happen on the 20th. And so those are avenues for discourse and information sharing to occur.
So I guess the follow-up to that would be, what could be a potential outcome from that? I mean, if you have a tremendous amount of public support that shows up to continue with that class, is there a potential that that's going to influence the outcome as to what may actually happen?
Well, this is a point of order, but you like, if you wanna talk about this, I think this is where you say, I want it on the agenda for next week.
Yeah, and that may be, I mean, I want to wrap things up, I know, but these are just some of the questions I have. Or maybe these are things I can reach out to you separately or you separately and just say, hey, because I got a lot.
The quick answer is that board members don't influence, or determine what classes are taught at the high school. This wasn't brought to my attention because it is the principal's sole discretion, what the course of studies are. The course of studies is often done with a guidance counselor and the school administration. It doesn't even often arise to the superintendent level. So this is not an area where board has control, let alone the superintendent. Like I'm not, and I don't decide there.
But it's definitely brewing, like you hear it in the
Yes.
district.
Yeah, it's a legitimacy question.
You should go and Jen can go, right?
Yep, so
to
folks
the
should reach
20th.
out to me, Delina, and Chelsea, because even if you're a parent, or if you say you're like, I'm here with my parent hat, but if there's 3 other people, you are a quorum.
3 other board members.
Excuse me, yes, board members, then you are a quorum. And you couldn't just say I'm a parent today.
Isn't it 4?
Well,
Yeah.
if there were 3 other in addition. to her.
Oh, sorry.
So if anybody wants to go, let Chelsea or.
Well, I'll probably be there. Strong chance.
Yep, anytime you're gonna RSVP to an event, include Delina on it too, so she can know, because we don't wanna
So the
violate.
thing, what you wanted to talk about is covered next week under the staffing budget thing, right? Didn't you add a agenda?
Yes, the thing that I want to be clear about with agendas is, it should be clear to our community what we're talking about. And so, is it covered if the community member looked at the agenda, would they know that's what we're talking?
Yeah, so Jennifer, if you wanna talk about that more, then I think you should provide Chelsea feedback on how to phrase that.
I think that Jennifer's question is, what's the board role in this issue? And the answer is pretty succinct, that the board does not select curriculum. So I don't think we need to have board discussion about it. I think that's support I can offer her as chair. We don't need to have a meeting about it. If the support I provide to Jennifer is insufficient, she may say, I'd like for this to be a board discussion.
And then you evaluate me on it in 2 months. Based on the criteria the board has set.
Use all the, use all the policies that we want to schedule.
Thanks. But it is.
We actually, this is from October 23.
This is from the website.
Yeah, that updated. We got a new website and so not everything is updated.
I think that this is meant to be an intention of how often and when these
Right.
policies are monitored.
And those are all the policies. There aren't any others that we are supposed to be monitoring.
I mean, I want to double check to make sure, but theoretically, we also have a board work plan that we will approve as a team. It's like this. And so it details. In this part, this is the policies that we monitor, but then also we're figuring out when we have budget meetings and. It breaks it down into kind of our buckets as board members and then what month. So that we can say, you know, which meetings we're gonna be talking about these topics.
And there, the curriculum one is in the fall, because we have the assessment, the assessment data is embargoed for periods of time, so we put it in the fall as part of budget development. It's a data point. We have all the data. Same with the financial pieces. The board should know where you are before you enter into the new fiscal year's discussion. So they're timed with the board's work.
Is this all discussion and agenda?
We're off
Yeah.
topic.
We are doing-
We're still
This is
training.
what we need.
Okay, so I think that we've outlined everything for the 19th meeting. I will also, in my board update email to you all, detail everything that I'm adding to the 19th. And if there's anything that I'm missing, or anything you'd like to add, please let me know. Is that good? One quick question I'd like to ask the board in regard to the 19th. Different boards have had different preferences for how the board chair communicates with the community about the work that we're doing. And something that I've heard, I think from this team pretty collectively, is increasing engagement, particularly around monitoring. And if we're going to be monitoring a report at our next meeting, would you like me to include that in the report forum and encourage folks to send questions via email about the report that we'll be monitoring? I just feel like that's kind of a time sensitive question, since I'll need to send that.
So what's an example of what you would have?
They don't know enough about.
I was.
They have no schema for understanding our question.
Okay,
I
so
think-
then,
Yeah,
I'll explain my question in my board update email and
yeah.
we'll follow up. Okay. Are we done talking about agenda?
Yeah.
So that brings us to agenda item 6, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn the regular session of the South Burlington School Board meeting?
I'm to adjourn.
Second.
One second, any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and the session is adjourned. So everyone.